My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise podcast. It's time to remember this crap. And we not only have our usual crap rememberer, Mike Donahue, but we have a special guest. We have Kelly Dwyer, NBA auteur. I didn't use that word right. But a guy who has also has a exciting Substack, just like Pointless Exercise. His is at tsa.substack.com, the second arrangement. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi, Eddie.
So we asked Kelly on. He's a huge fan of Remember This Crap, apparently. He is our fan. And we're not going to spin the wheel. We pulled a year out that is kind of a typical Cub year for us, but a year near and dear to Kelly's heart. We're going to talk about the 1985 MLB baseball season. For those of you who don't know, Kelly is one of only 2 Cardinal fans that I can actually stand.
The other is your brother-in-law, correct?
I'm not going to be committal to...
You can't stand your brother-in-law?
No, I don't want him to get a big head, because what if he's not the other one? What if there is another somewhere? But... So, yeah, we don't have to do we're not going to spin anything. We're not going to do anything. We can just dive right in.
Oh, I'm going to get spun. I'm going to get spun and roasted and destroyed on here. I'm extremely nervous, but as a Cardinal fan, I'm owed all of this.
We wouldn't beat up on the guest.
You should beat up on the guest.
It's the Kelly Dwyer rotisserie hour.
All right, Mike, what are 5 fun facts about the 1985 Cubs?
Oh, boy. Yeah, good thing I had a week to prepare. I don't know. I think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about a 13-game losing streak, which was very wild because the Cubs came into the season, defending a division championship. The season went sideways just like that. Opening day starter. Another fact, Rick Sutcliffe, his first ever opening day start. The Cubs outdueled the Pirates in a chilly Wrigley Field. Which was also fact number 3, Dwayne Staats' first game as a Cub broadcaster. He replaced the much maligned Milo Hamilton. And you kind of casually mentioned the other day, Andy, Dwayne Staats, probably in retrospect, probably the finest second banana in that sort of, in that era that we're covering, basically, that at least until Harry died with Len Casper, the sort of second banana to Harry, let's say. You only have 3 guys, Brenneman, I guess, being the third one. But it was Dwayne's first season before he took the big bucks in New York a few years later. Also the debut of your favorite Cub on the opening day, Shawon Dunston, 20 years old and real fucking raw.
Shawon with an O.
Yeah, he would.
As one does.
He'd be on a Vandergelder out west on I-80 about 2 months after the season started back to Des Moines. And let's see, fact number 5, it is true that at one point in the 1985 season, the entire Cubs starting rotation, that all of, the 4 of the 5, or I guess if you include Dick Ruthven, all 5 that were the top 5 starters in the 84 season were on the disabled list at one time. So if you're, guessing as to what the fate of the season was at this point, I think I've given enough just with that fact. Not a great season for the Cubs, but...
Okay, so Dwayne Staats, are we counting Vince Lloyd as someone who would have been?
That's a good point,
because he was there with Harry for the first 3 years, right?
Well, it was so when Harry
comes. Was he around 84 or was he gone?
He was, because I still remember listening to the Game 5 on the radio when it was a 3-man booth in the playoffs with Harry and Lou Boudreau and Vince Lloyd, because Harry, of course, wasn't on television. 82 is the one that I can't quite recall. I just know after. All right, so I think we pieced it together because Milo was all set to succeed Jack Brickhouse after 81 before the trap door opened up beneath him, and then he had to work for 3 seasons with Harry. So I think I'm not sure what the makeup was before then, other than the fact that Vince Lloyd was primarily radio, and Brickhouse may have gone to the radio for innings 4, 5, and 6, in which case I think either Lloyd came over. But at some point I remember, and this is definitely true by 85, that Steve Stone would take a crack for the first time ever on that aforementioned opening day against the Pirates, that when Dwayne Stats was hired to be the radio guy, he would do innings 1 through 3 and 7 through 9 on the radio. Harry would go to the radio innings 4, 5, and 6. However, when Dwayne Stats came to the TV side in the 4th inning, he was the color guy to Steve Stone's first attempt at play-by-play, which Stone himself basically aborted after a few years. So usually when by the time Brenneman came along in 1990, he would just do play-by-play, 3 on the radio, 3 on TV, 3 on the radio again.
So I think we figured out in the 82 one that the broadcast team was just Vince and Lou
on the radio,
Milo and Harry
on TV, and then
on
Stoney
TV.
joined in 83.
Right.
So then there's some sort of a roulette began there, and Vince Lloyd was phased out 84, 85. So yeah, you're right. Vince Lloyd was there in 84. So maybe Vince Lloyd left after Milo Hamilton. I don't know. So I guess I didn't have it as nailed down as I thought.
I don't know. I can just tell you that the kids who listen to this podcast love us talking about announcers from 40 years ago. They love it.
And guess what? They're all dead except for Dwayne Stats and Steve Stone.
I can't imagine Stone calling play-by-plays. That would just how do you set up your own Lance McCullers? I mean, how do you do that on your own?
You can't.
Dwayne Stats trying to bob in every. Oh my gosh, that sounds horrifying.
It was, and I believe he kind of ruined Keith Moreland's game-winning homer on opening day. He just not ready for prime time. Not then, not ever, probably.
Well, do you remember where Dwayne Stats went after his
the Yankees? Wasn't it like a pioneering cable network? Was that the humble beginnings of Yes? Maybe?
No, it wasn't Yes, but it was something. He got big money. Cubs couldn't possibly match whatever Dwayne was going to get from the Yankees, so he was gone. And then that got us the wonderful Tom with an H, right?
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. Good stuff. So the 85 Cubs, the 84 Cubs, I don't know if people know this, they almost won the pennant. People don't talk about it much. And so they did what you do. They ran it back. It was pretty much the same team coming back, except the diminutive little hard-ass Larry Bowa was not going to be the shortstop anymore. It was going to be Shawon Dunston, the guy they had drafted ahead of D. White Gooden in 1982. Right? Was that 85?
Correct. Dallas Green's first draft.
So it was going to be the Cubs. It was going to be the 84 Cubs, but even better.
Yeah, it was exciting, right? Who the hell who was going to be a Larry Bowa stan? I mean, the guy had the range of a garden gnome. He could one a completely irrelevant bat. Just fiery guy, sure. Maybe give some credit for helping bring Sandberg along. I don't know.
Why do we have to give Larry credit for anything? I do know that the 85 season was the season in which all of a sudden a game in Shea Stadium, Larry had glasses on. And Harry was very excited about that. And he's like, oh, I bet the ball looks like a beach ball to him now. Well, he couldn't hit a beach ball either.
I read the SI preview for the season, and they highlighted the Bowa versus Dunston pairing in spring training, and they're trying to explain the other sides of the coin, and they're like, well, Bowa hit 220. Bowa hit 223 the big leagues last year, and Dunston had 231 in Tidewater last year, and you read on and you think, wait, did I just read that right? He out-hit him in AAA, and he with 220 in the it's probably time. But Bowa was ready. He was doing Bowa stuff, trying to get him out of there. He didn't see the handwriting on the wall because it was above 5'10", but he tried pull the chair.
That's 5-time national.
Is he
League
beloved
All-Star.
even in Philadelphia?
Well, nobody's beloved in Philadelphia, right? Isn't that a rule of thumb? Even the greats?
Yeah, not even Santa Claus.
Chris Fringo.
Bowa, I mean, it's fair to mention, too, that Bowa, coming into 1985, was a 39-year-old shortstop. But I'm stuck on, Kelly, your summary of the SI article. I mean, you mentioned Tidewater. Obviously, you meant Des Moines. But did Dunston really perform that poorly the previous year? Did the Cubs – I mean, we always suspected the Cubs rushed Dunston, and they probably –
you mean with the Cubs promoting a player who wasn't ready?
No, possibly do that
to
get rid of the guidance of Larry Bowa in that clubhouse. Why would they want to hurry that along? Tidewater. I must have been thinking Greg Jeffries or Lee Mazzilli or something.
Sure. We were on them. We mentioned the Mets, but no. But I think the salient point was
230 versus 220 versus AAA versus the majors. They mentioned errors, and Shawon had something like 140 or something like that. Yeah. But no one cares about that.
I'm pretty sure he uncorked one on opening day. I mean, he made his presence known right away. Like, he had a great arm, and Durham was a good first baseman, but. And then, of course, I think Grace ended up being more known as the guy that had the thankless task sometimes of, knocking down some of those. Maybe he threw.
He was built.
My dad always theorized. I never showed. My dad always used to theorize that the Cubs should have moved Dunston to center field. I don't know if that has any merit or if it would have made a bit of difference, but it seemed kind of a strange suggestion.
He would have drawn more walks in center. I mean, wasn't most of his value the fact that he was a shortstop?
I suppose so. Yeah, he never did really. Although he was, we talked about this. He was, as a offensive player, as meek as his numbers look now, a bit of an outlier because, as we've also discussed ad nauseum, just the sort of like the malnourished looking prototypical shortstop for about 20 years from the 70s and 80s. Your Johnny LeMasters or your Mark Belangers. They're just like reedy.
Your Larry Bowa.
And Larry, the aforementioned Larry Bowa. So, Dunston, of course, Ripken kind of broke the mold in '82, but and Dunston and Larkin kind of came up, and eventually there became higher expectations for offensive output. But even in his time, Dunston was an above-average offensive player. But Kelly's right; he did bat 233. But he split time in '84 between Midland, but he's still 61, 217 plate appearances. He was struggling.
And also follow up on that, the Cubs AAA affiliate was in Tidewater that season.
Cubs AAA affiliate was in
They moved it
Iowa.
just for that one year.
Right.
That must have been in the Sid Finch baseball preview. I apologize.
All right, so in '84, he started at Midland, and he hit 329 with a 354 on base and a 423 slug. He struck out 38 times in 298 at-bats. Not terrible, but a lot. Yes, and then he went to Iowa, and he did not perform well by any measure. 233, 247, 395. Probably not. Hey, next year, he's our starting shortstop on this team we think is going to win a World Series. So
right.
Did you guys have like
another year of development?
Was there a Bo Hart in there? Was there a scrapper? Was there an X-Time? Was there someone that was going to fill the bridge in there cheaply for? All
right, so that's a great question. That's a great question. Andy could probably tell you who Bo's backups were in '84. One was an equally ancient Tom Verizor. The other was Dave Owen, though. But Spike's brother and the guy with the game-winning hit in the Sandberg game. But Dave Owen, I guess, was just not. You couldn't stretch him enough from Dunston.
He was no 39-year-old Spike. He's no Spike.
Larry Bowa was posting him up, just throwing bows over the top of him. I was like, "Who's this guy hitting me in the eyes? I'm gonna have to get glasses."
Looks like the guy who got the is this going to be the most? No, the guy who played the most games at shortstop for the '85 Cubs.
Okay, I guess. Was Chris Spire in the '85 Cubs?
It's Chris Spire. Yes.
It just popped into my head.
Guy who once, as a coach of the Cubs, got a DUI on the way home from a game.
Right, on a motorcycle, I believe,
or a moped or something. Probably had no shoes on his moped.
Well, I remember being
not a Sox coach, but a Cubs coach.
Right. I remember being briefly excited only because Chris Spire was. He was he was on that Expos team that was good. Apparently, he was not really on that level of all of that talent that they had. But hey, Chris Spire, I know him, and he's not Larry Bowa.
Commodity.
Yeah, and poor Sean had to get sent back to Iowa after a couple months in '85, so needed some seasoning.
I'd be interested here. So Shawon ended up with, fairly respectable numbers in 85.
698 OPS
for a 260.
22-year-old.
For a 22-year-old thrown to the Wolves.
Okay, so here's what happened. First half, he played 23 games before he got sent down. He hit 194, 266 on base, 319 slug. After some seasoning, actually, people forget, he originally got on the bus and he went to Tidewater. That cost him a few days. He then got on another bus and got to Des Moines.
Some idiot Cardinal fan gave directions.
Tidewater? What? Shawon came back and played in 51 games in the second half. Hit 287 with a 328 on base, 416 slug. He hit
22,
3 homers. So not bad.
Yeah.
Then we were excited about 1986 Shawon Dunston, and then we were excited until 1988. Right.
Well, 88. He was an all-star.
When he made the All-Star team in 1988, and Whitey fucking Herzog wouldn't play him.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he didn't play.
Kelly.
Only player didn't play. Not that I was upset.
You just took a whack at Kelly. I'm going to jump to another one. This is the only season between 1982 and 1993 in which Ryne Sandberg was not rightfully voted to be the starter in the All-Star game because Kelly's people jammed the ballot boxes for Tommy Herr's hot first 2 months of the 85 season.
You want to hear
get a home run?
What's that? Tommy, would you say something about single-digit homers but still having 100 RBIs?
Single home run. Did he have one home run before July 8th?
Well, 1 year he had 9 homers and 100 RBIs, which was impressive, but also, I don't know.
It wasn't this year because he only had 8 home runs.
Only had 8.
Do you want to hear a horrible story about 1988? I'm going to tell you it anyway. Even though it's the 85, it tracks somehow.
It's a big year.
1988.
All-Stars.
Growing up on a farm, Northern Illinois, horrible drought. Had a drought. Corn, you could hear it curling up and dying in the fields.
Hottest summer ever.
The only thing, my only respite from, the angst going on in my house was the Cubs had all these all-stars. Vance Law was an all-star, for God's sakes. I mean, you couldn't shake a tree and a Cub all-star and fall out of it. Looking really forward to the all-star game. It was also, the week of the all-star game was football camp. So I went to football camp. Come Monday night, go to football camp, hotter than hell, get through it, thinking, all right, tomorrow, get to watch the All-Star game. It's going to be great. Dad picks me up, doesn't say a word. We get almost home, and he's like, I got to tell you, I got some bad news. Our neighbor had run over our dog and killed him. So then, it's like, oh, God, things can't get any worse. I somehow gut through football camp the next day, get home. The only thing that's going to be the salve to my wounds is watching my favorite player play in the All-Star game. And he was the only player who didn't play in the All-Star game.
Wow.
Thank you, Whitey.
That's
I should have told. I had an entire afternoon with Whitey once, and I should have fucking done nothing but yell at him for that. But I didn't.
I'm very sorry about that. I along those same lines, I got grounded the day before, and I was not able to watch the All-Star Gala on TBS or TNT. No, TBS, because TNT wasn't around then. Because I'd attempted to feed a cheeseburger or part of it to a cat. So that's kind of related. But I was genuinely told that I couldn't watch the All-Star Gala. And I remember being sent to my room and going, oh, no, I have to go down and turn off the TV that is currently showing the MLB All-Star Gala. And because can't leave the TV on in the den. And so I went and turned it on. And there was Gary Carter and his perm being interviewed. And I couldn't watch it. And I had to go over and flip it off and go up to my room, but we didn't have a dog, so I'm
I didn't
sorry
either.
About that, Andy.
After that, I didn't. Just for a few weeks. Then we went and got a dog. We actually went and we bought a dog from the same place we had bought a dog before we got. And so that was Fred that got run over. We got his half brother Rex. But a few weeks later, Rex was the famous 3-legged dog that we had. He was 4-legged at the time. He ended up 3-legged. But yeah, but that's what I'll always think of.
So Ozzie and Barry Larkin were the only other shortstops. I just looked it up. So his guy Ozzie, although even with Kelly here, I'll admit that it was hard for me to get my ire up over Whitey Herzog.
How many at-bats did Ozzie get? 8?
Get some
was he over
ire up.
8?
Yeah, really.
Shawon
I don't.
sitting on the bench. I'm ready, Skip. I'm ready to go ahead. No, you have to.
39-year-old Ozzy slapping around on Riverfront AstroTurf in a 2-1 game where Terry Steinbach wins the MVP. We can get Shawon in there. Schwanometer was around in July '88. I saw it. 5 All-Stars. Throw him a bone, Whitey.
Didn't have to play him at shortstop. Hey, they could have. Why they listen to your dad? They could have played him in center field.
That's right.
Play him at shortstop. That's the problem.
They would have to put up nets.
Isn't it Chris Bryant has been in 3 All-Star games and he's only played third base in one of them? He got picked as a third baseman 3 times, and the only one was the one he started.
Interestingly, the starting center fielder was Andre Dawson of the Cubs in the All-Star game. Also,
you could hear his knees click all over the turf at Riverfront.
Also, the only other 2 center the only other 2 center fielders listed: Willie McGee and Andy Van Slyke.
Boy, it seems like a lot of Cardinals.
Yeah, but he wasn't a Cardinal then, was he?
Who?
He's a Pirate.
Van Slyke in '85
with the '88 All-Star game. He'd been
88.
Yeah. Wrong. I detoured us into the wrong All-Star game. All right, we got to steer back.
About Steinbach.
Steer into the skid and back to 1985.
85.
And again, with the Cubs, it was a skid, pretty much the whole time.
Yeah. I can, without even looking it up, I'll just jump into it. And for those who don't know, we already referenced it, right? Kids, Cubs first playoff appearance in 39 years, get off to a hot start. They're cruising in first place early June. They go to Montreal, and this is why I remember it. Monday Night Baseball, which we've talked about. That was the thing. Never nearly as big as Monday Night Football. But it was, in the summer, ABC would put on a national game. I think they would regionalize it a little bit, but there'd be one quasi-national game. And the Cubs and the Expos. Cubs are kind of on a roll here in early June. I don't know the date yet. I didn't pull it up. But Jeff Reardon.
June 10th, Cubs are 34-19, have a 3-game lead in the NL East.
Future Hall of Famer Jeff Reardon comes into the game to nail it down for the Expos, and everyone's like, ooh, Jeff Reardon, his nickname's the Terminator. And then the Cubs scorched him, and a young Tim McCarver very cheekily declared that the Cubs have rendered Jeff Reardon the X-Terminator. So we all guffawed in my yeah, pretty good one from McCarver there. Cubs won the next game. Expos were always good around then too, right? Even though they had already purged themselves of Dawson and Ellis Valentine and Gary Carter, but they still had Tim Raines and the Expos salvaged the next two games. And all right, big deal. All right. Come back home to play the Cardinals. I don't know what happened in the Friday game. Just know, obviously, they lost because they're 3 games in. And I went to the Saturday game. My dad, my sister, and I, we sat in the bleachers. And, the interesting thing, too, about 85 is that after 84, Dallas Green allowed bleacher tickets to be sold in advance. It outraged some purists, but it was very convenient. It was always easy to go to games in the bleachers. We could buy 4 tickets, and if we don't get 4 people, it's easy to sell a ticket, blah, blah, blah. That's probably why there were 3 of us. But my dad bought 4 tickets for 4 or 5 games, and if you couldn't sell it, it was easy enough to drive down there and sell it on the street. But we went to this game, and I only mention it because we got there late, had to have, because we're sitting basically underneath the scoreboard, and all I can remember is that Jack Clark hit one out onto the street, and visually it's very interesting to sit up underneath that scoreboard and just watch the trajectory of the ball. Still a 4-game losing streak, no big deal.
The Cubs, it's veterans of the 4-game losing streak process.
They get swept on Sunday, and Sunday now, Andy, I know you have. I guess I've taken the reins here, but you're gonna have to. You have a similar story in that on Sunday for me was when I shipped off to the Jerry Sloan basketball camp, and I was a very middling basketball player. I made the 7th grade team by the skin of my teeth. My friend's parents, my friend had done it the year before, and they couldn't stop talking about it. And the selling pitch was that, well, Brian was a bench warmer last year, but he wouldn't even have been that if he didn't go to this camp.
Jerry
bit of pressure.
Jerry Sloan told him everything he knows.
Right, exactly.
Taking charges in work boots and a John Deere hat.
So I convinced my parents to go, and it was exciting. We drive down to Aurora University. I mean, you grow up in the suburbs, you don't leave. We went outside of a trip to Florida and St. Louis. I'm going all the way to Aurora
for the exotic locales like Aurora, Illinois.
and Aurora University, the prestigious campus, and it was fun. You're a kid, you're on your own, you're with one of your buddies, you get to meet all these other kids. We ship in Sunday night. The Cubs have lost 5 in a row. That's all right. We wake up the next morning. We have a nice breakfast in this cafeteria, and then we go and all right, we're going to start. We're going to see Jerry Sloan, who for us kids then, 13 years old, Jerry Sloan was the coach of the last good Bulls team with Reggie Theus and Artis Gilmore and Ronnie Lester and then, before the Jordan era. But Sloan had been forced out by Rod Thorne or whatever, and he kind of resurfaces in Utah as not a coach, but he was an office guy. Maybe GM Frank Layden was the coach of the Jazz. But nevertheless, doesn't matter. It's the summer. It's Jerry Sloan's camp. He was there last year, and we're all getting ready. And all of a sudden, this old timer comes out, who I learned from my friend's dad. Apparently, was some sort of a local legend at Aurora University. Kelly, you can look him up. Grail Gilkey. D-R-A.
Okay, yeah, bring him up. Yeah, I got Grail Gilkey.
Hey, you're a basketball guy. This can add to your revenue.
Ray Gilkey up.
You can really get granular here.
Ray was the guy who cut the bottom of the peach basket out.
Not Ray. His name was Grail. It was like some old-ass American name. I don't know, from the country. Grayal. And he was already an old-ass guy. And there's an old guy with a paunch and like white hair. And he's basically telling us, well, Jerry Sloan's not here because this is the week of the NBA. I'm like, what the fuck? Really? Like, so Vern's like, what a ripoff.
Jerry Sloan basketball camp. Asterisk, Jerry Sloan not included.
Well, so oops, I forgot the draft. And then I thought about it today when I played it over my head. I'm like, well, the NBA was very disorganized. This is early David Stern era. It's possible. The NBA as recently as 3 years earlier in 81 was showing the NBA finals on tape. Maybe the NBA didn't have the date set, but Jerry Sloan did.
Hey,
and they just realized,
can you guys make it next Wednesday for the draft? Who can make it Wednesday? Wednesday?
I know the draft is on the 23rd because we got I got soybeans that are always getting a little rigid this time of year.
Yeah,
so
Red.
Drafting time.
Hey, Red. When would either one of you? Which one? When do you want to have the draft? All right, we're doing it on Wednesday. Did they dramatically they come off the camp and then somebody says, playing the role of Jerry Sloan this week will be Grail Geeky, whatever his name was.
In fact, it took a while to sink in. Like, no, seriously, where's Jerry Sloan? Like, all right, what? Like, why? This is why half of us are here. We want to see Jerry Sloan, the old Bulls coach. And, obviously the earlier generation who knows him as the feisty guard with Norm Van Leer and Tom Boerwinkle and Chet Walker and Bob Love. But he was very well known, and it felt like we got sold a bill of goods. And then, to accentuate the disappointment after dinner, we climb into somebody's dorm room to watch another edition of Monday Night Baseball, where the Cubs finally face their bitter rivals from this season before, the New York Mets, and Bob Dernier's not even there. Like, who the fuck is Darren Jackson? Like, this is bad. And then, of course, the Cubs lose. Now the losing streak's getting kind of embarrassing. It's 6. Then the next day we're at camp, and then the other disappointment now on top of all of this, at the time we proved we didn't know what we were talking about, but Grail Gilkey, when he assembles us, we're all sitting on the floor for the next day. And day 2 of the Jerry Sloan basketball camp with Grail Gilkey, Aurora University coaching legend. He at one point he started, every time we would break, he would read us the updated results of the draft. And so that's when we're sitting around and we learned that the Bulls drafted Final Four participant Keith Lee, and we're all very excited, only to learn shortly thereafter that he had been traded for Charles Oakley, which obviously Jerry Krause knew what he was doing there. But nobody knew who the hell Charles Oakley was. Charles Barkley? Wait.
You know what happened, right? So he makes the pick, and then Jerry gets a look. He's watching the game. What would that have been on? Was that on USA Network? Was it even on TV?
Yeah.
TBS or USA? Yeah.
USA.
So they somehow find Keith Lee and his mom, and Jerry looks and says, "Oh, his mom's hands are way too fucking small."
No. There's just no way.
He's
like, I was watching $64,000 Pyramid on USA Network earlier, and Dick Clark is just looking like 2 to 3 inches wider than this lady right now. So there's no way we can keep this pick.
But yeah, so the Cubs do end up getting swept by the Mets. It was just torture. I mean, I have not much more to say. You can look it up. The Cardinals then the Cubs go to St. Louis for the second end of the ass kicking, and it eventually came to an end. The Cubs were still over 500 at the end of it. And then the last thing I'll say is how angry our family got when Ron Rappaport of the Sun-Times wrote an article that pointed out that no team that had lost 13 games in a row had ever, basically made the playoffs. What are you talking about? The Cubs are still over 500, and Ron Rappaport proved to be correct.
Way to go, Rap.
That's the stats ruining baseball. I got another stat that'll ruin your day. Tommy Herr was batting .368 in the first game of that Cubs-Cardinal series. How, I ask, besides that clickety-clack of the blacktop underneath that AstroTurf.
Well, that's it, right? Just like seeing eyeballs, they hit maybe, you got to make decent contact, but, shooting them through.
So I worked with a guy who he was our age. He was an HR director for a while, and we could just tell he was full of shit, like all the time. It was just he had the stories he had were always ridiculous, and he had lived in St. Louis for a while. Actually, I think he probably was he might have been doing HR for one of the strip clubs in Sauget, but he was connected with with St. Louis. And he was on a committee that was doing some kind of they were raising money to buy bikes for underprivileged Missourians. You would think they'd focus their money on dental work, but they were worried about the bikes. So Tommy Herr was like the face of this campaign, and this guy got picked at the end of it was very successful. They bought a bunch of bikes for people and for kids, I guess. And he got to go to Busch Stadium before a game, and he got to symbolically present Tommy Herr with a bike, which that doesn't make any sense, really. We're raising money to give them to the kids. We're going to get one of the second. Bring out the
bike. It's going to make sense to everyone.
Rides it around the warning track.
So anyway, Chuck is really excited, and he gets to go out on the field and stand at home plate with the bike, probably a nice Huffy. And Tommy comes out, shakes his hand. And Chuck tries to give him the bike. Here, it's yours. Take it. And Tommy looks at him and goes, I got to play a fucking game. What am I supposed to do with the bike? And he's like, can you get it to my house? And he's like, well, can't you take it home? This is going to fit in my car. He's like, well, what do you want me to do with it? He goes, I don't care. You can keep the damn thing. So there's Chuck arguing with Tommy Herr on the field. After I'm sure the St. Louis fans giving the polite clap. Oh, that's nice. Why are they still talking? Tommy's mad.
You take the bike.
So
Steam is rising off the AstroTurf.
Chuck ended up with Tommy Herr's bike because Tommy couldn't fit it in his, I don't know what, his Corvair or whatever he was driving at the time. It fit
Fiero. Right. I was going to say Fiero.
The engine's back there. You can't put a bike back there.
The Cardinals were all Fieros back then.
Pretty much. All Fieros and yellow Corvettes. So, Eckstein special.
Okay, so yes, I went to basketball camp the exact week you were at basketball camp. I went to a much more prestigious basketball camp. Mine was at the University of Dubuque, because that's it's a big time basketball camp.
When you think basketball, you think the banks of the Mississippi River.
You think head coach John Davison. Not That's Incredible, John Davidson.
Not the guy from this Kentucky Supper Club fire, John Davidson.
Right, the Notre Dame grad.
Or Beverly Hills Supper Club fire. But the Dubuque one.
Yeah, John
did this one not have a D in his name? Is it Davison?
Davison. No D. Davison. No two. There is a D, but it's not right next to each other. Like Elephant Book?
Got it.
No. So yeah, we went to Dubuque. So the Cubs were in the midst of their what we just assumed was going to be 5 or 6 game losing streak, and these are the defending National League East champs. They're going to be fine.
Pick themselves back up.
And we were there for a week, and we didn't. It's Iowa. They didn't have televisions, so we couldn't really monitor what was going on. But I was shocked and appalled when I guess we probably finished up on, I don't know, Friday maybe. Maybe that's how long the camp was, and everybody's parents show up, and you get to see the kids. You get to see what we learned. We're going to scrimmage, and a high quality camp where we split into shirts and skins. It's like, wait a minute, guys, do we get a T-shirt? Anything?
It's 1985.
What did we pay for? Dad's like, oh, the Cubs haven't won since you left. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch. So that wasn't good.
Yeah, it was rough.
That was the year though that I one of the best parts of going to basketball camp, right, was you got to eat food in the cafeteria.
It was great.
You could have all the stuff. You got to act like a
right. Yeah. And when you're 13,
tray of everything.
That's one of the things that stands out more than anything was the food.
Well, there's some idiot that goes up to the pop machine and puts a little bit of every flavor in the thing, and then tells everybody how great it is, and everybody's got to try it, and we're like, this sucks. Yeah. We did that. I ate something one of the days that didn't quite agree with me, and this is what I remember about year one of of basketball. We went back the next year because it was so good.
Oh, repeat customer.
I'm walking from the cafeteria back to the field house, and some of the older campers, because in 1985 I was 12, and they're so some of the like high school kids, they're around a different schedule than us, and they're walking by and they're like, we're cool, and I just barfed all over the sidewalk, just let it all out. So then I show up I'm like I don't feel terrible now. So I tell like my coach, thinking back, my coach was probably like 14. You coach this team. And I'm like, I just barfed all over out there. He's like, you think you can play? I'm like, yeah, let's see. And I was the resiliency of a 12-year-old.
No protocols in place.
So then once I knew I wasn't like sick, then it was like, oh, I'm telling everybody. Oh, you should have seen it. I barfed all over out there. That was the best. Yeah. What I do remember the next year was, so there was a kid that year. Oh, there's one horrible. I got the second horrible story. There was one of those high school kids picked on, like he was a bully. He was being mean to us, and he was really a dick. We didn't like him, and I remember I don't remember his name, but I remember that he went to Maquoketa High School in Maquoketa, Iowa. I don't know why I remember that, but I remember it because they had like their whole team there, and he was a dick. And we were going back the next year, like we're riding, and one of our moms or dads is driving, us to Dubuque. And we're like, think that guy will be there? Oh, he was a prick, blah, 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 blah. And we're kind of dreading even having to run into this guy.
Wow, you remembered him.
We remembered him. So we get there, and the first day they have us, we're all sitting Indian style around the, on the gym floor, and the electric John Davidson's walking around getting us all fired up. And he has to start with a very somber, he's like, I don't know, guys, I don't know how many of you know this, but over the winter, there was an accident. The kid who bullied us was dead. And we're like looking at each other like, yeah, that motherfucker's not here. This is gonna be great.
Right, he's not here. Right.
Oh, it sounds like he was in like in a snowstorm in Iowa. He, a snowplow ran over him. I don't know what happened, but he died. We were like, we're 13 and we're still assholes. We're like, oh, thank God he's not gonna be here. That'll be good.
Right.
And that wasn't the only death that we had to deal with, though.
We had a roll call. Oh God, it was like the Oscars.
What? So, one of our friends, for some inexplicable reason, was a huge Celtics fan. He was. And
I like the Celtics.
In year 2 of the basketball camp, now we had. I don't know if we had a USA Today. We somehow had a way to keep track of what was going on, and the NBA draft happened.
Oh God!
And
Brad Steller's draft. Oh,
so he gets all excited because the Celtics drafted Len Bias. So for a day he's telling us about Len Bias. He's better than Jordan. He's gonna kick the Bulls' ass. Blah 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 blah.
Right.
And the very next day we look at the paper and the headline of the sports pages: Len Bias is dead.
Like a prank. Like someone pasted it in there with actual paste. Like, we're going to show Jimmy over there. We're going to say he died of a drug overdose overnight. A photo of a lady crying.
I was
Red Auerbach with a somber face. We're going to totally freak out Terry and all his buddies. Better than Jordan. No, really. He went back to his dorm and died. It was very tragic.
Like Lefty Drizel. Oh, it's amazing. Only time in his life he ever tried cocaine.
Yes.
Yes.
What are the odds?
Yes.
That's tragic.
$1 million.
Oh, it's terrible.
Interestingly, a quick internet sleuthing tells me that your old guy, Coach John Davidson, celebrated his 80th birthday in 2019. He must have been a young fellow when he was running those camps.
He was handsome.
Yeah, he was no Grail Gilkey, who I looked him up. There's a Tribune article. I don't have the firewall because I'm a cheap ass from April, and it starts, who is the only man in the East Aurora and the West Aurora Hall of Fame? And apparently that it's an article about Grail Gilkey.
Because he's so old, he was coaching them when they were Aurora.
If Grail Gilkey's still alive, then yeah.
Not a former NIU Huskies head coach.
Your guy, John
friend of mine and Dave Kaplan, John McDougal. Yes, he was only at West Aurora.
Got it. Well, he probably knew Grail Gilkey.
Where he coached Kenny Battle.
Yes, before he
trained
in high school.
He probably didn't coach Kenny Battle in high school. He coached him at Northern, and when McDougal got fired, Kenny said, "Fuck this," and he went.
That's why McDougal left. didn't want to work with Joey Meyer's acolyte, Rick Molinari, who would take them to the tournament my freshman year in 91 and lose to St. John's and the late Malik Sealy. Talk about dead people. Sorry.
So we had tickets to a game on Wednesday, June 26th. Cubs and the Mets. Been looking forward to it forever until all of a sudden I wasn't because the Cubs were free falling down the standings.
Holy cow.
And see, what was the pitching matchup? I'm sure I remember it. It was Sid Fernandez and Cubs immortal Ray Fontenot matching up. The Cubs had lost 13 in a row, where we drag our ass all the way from Podunk, Durand to Chicago to watch the Cubs. And the Cubs broke their 13-game losing streak. A resounding 7-3 win over the Mets.
Yeah, we're back, baby.
Yeah, even after the 13-game losing streak, Cubs are 36-32.
Yeah.
It's just a blip. It'll be fine.
I would have lost my mind breaking things like that. Bust out of camp like that. Go straight to the gold of crashing the streak. That's incredible.
That's right.
Plus, you're the next generation Cubs fan. You're post Black Cat. You got the power of '84 behind you.
We lived with '84. Andy,
this is the turnaround.
You said at the beginning, with dripping with irony that '84, it's implying that it's not a season you hear a lot about, but it really isn't compared to. It's like you don't hear it as much as '69, which whatever. But yeah, you still hear about it because it was pretty epochal. The only other thing I wanted to add that I had forgotten this happened, but the 1-year anniversary of the Sandberg game occurred during the 13 game, and I just remember it happening. And I already committed that date to memory. And the Cubs were playing the Cardinals again, and it was all. I remember feeling as a kid when I was 13 that John Tudor, who was like at that point in time, seemed just ridiculously unhittable. And I see now it was a 7-0 game. I'm pretty sure Tudor threw like a one-hitter. But I remember even as a kid, just like, Jesus Christ, how far have we fallen from a year? Like, a year earlier, Sandberg's hitting homers off of Bruce Sutter and things are alive. And now they're like just dragging to it. At that point, it was their 12th consecutive loss. But yeah, like you said, though, too, it was still June. They're still over 500. And Ron Rappaport's full of shit if he doesn't think the Cubs are going to make the playoffs.
Fuck Rapp. What a prick.
Meanwhile, the Cardinals at this point of this John Tudor flame throwing have Willie McGee and Tom Herr both batting .350. Also, Cub favorite Ivan DeJesus also batting .350. I don't know how I said Ivan DeJesus' name without saying it in a Harry voice. I guess Dempster's just ruined Harry for everyone, but it's my top Harry name. Yeah, Tudor, complete game. Look at that.
So I didn't remember that. So Ivan DeJesus played for the 85 Cardinals. Does that mean so Ozzie was just his backup that year?
Playing third base.
They benched him for Ivan?
For DeJesus?
I know you've won a few Golden Gloves, Ozzie, but Ivan DeJesus. So take a seat. If I could sit Shawon Dunston on All-Star Game someday, I sure hell could sit you. Flipping around on the field like some kind of spastic. Oh. So this is post Ken Oberkfell then.
Yes, they moved because they got Pendleton. So Oberkfell was the third base, right, Kelly? Oberkfell was the third baseman on the '82 team, the actual World Series winner. Right. And then Pendleton made his way. And Oberkfell actually had been a second baseman until the much discussed Tommy Herr supplanted him, and then Oberkfell moved to third to replace your buddy Ken Reitz, Andy.
Yeah, you can't keep that athleticism in the. You got to put that at third. You got to put that in the hot corner. You got to let those overflowing boundaries of that elastic light blue waistband. Come on, you got to move that stuff to where it counts. Second base. That's Tommy Herr territory.
Okay, but even then, it was short lived because Pendleton was there by now, right? 85 is Pendleton there.
Yeah, 85 was Pendleton.
Okay,
hitting giving us a whopping 591 OPS at the third base position.
Ooh, wow. He was a future MVP, but not for the Cardinals.
Not for the Cardinals. Let him go for Toddy Zeal.
Did he?
Yeah.
Drink to another Todd Zeal reference. He's been mentioned before on this thing.
Oh, the 95 podcast was all about.
He's the second to the Cubs have only made one or two trades since then, and you wouldn't even remember them, I believe, right? Like that was like the last legit Cubs Cardinals trade was.
Well, until they trade Wilson Contreras for Yachty coming up here next week. That would never happen because the Cardinals would never trade Yachty for
Right.
But so just a cursory look. So this shows how good the '85 Cubs were. You mentioned the John Tudor shutout in the middle of the losing streak. So I was zipping through the thing and I clicked on a game and it was an 8-0 win. It was a one-hitter by John Tudor. And then I realized that wasn't the game you were talking about, and I zipped up to that one. That was a 7-0 two-hitter by John Tudor.
Yeah, see, my memory is validated. Tudor was like, I feared him. And I don't know why. He was like a unassuming white guy.
He had a ridiculous year that year.
He did. Was he not Cy Young? I don't think he was, right? Do we know offhand?
Was it Ray Fontenot?
It might have been Ray Fontenot or possibly George Frazier. Wait a sec. 85.
Oh, no, he didn't. He finished second in the Cy Young.
Gooden.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Gooden. Gooden was like, Gooden had even a more ridiculous year.
I guess he was okay that year.
No, Gooden was 25-3 or something, right? Or 24-3.
I think he made the cover of Time and Newsweek in the same week that year. He was.
That's a hard luck Cy Young runner up. I got to say for John Tudor. Then
Tudor was 21-8 with a 1.93 ERA. He threw 14 complete games and 10 shutouts. He led the league.
He was 31.
Wow.
He led the league in shutouts and he was 31 years old.
He was that old.
Yeah, he gave his life to that season. It would seem. So, but this is not a case where he got robbed. It's like as awesome, as incredible as those numbers were. There's every chance that Gooden was still justifiably.
That's Gooden's year.
I mean, I just know the one loss with Gooden was 24-3, but
I don't know. Was Gooden really that good? 1985, 24-4, 1.53 ERA. He threw 16 complete games, but he only threw 8 shutouts.
Oh my God! It's not even close. You can't even make the case for two.
Led the league in strikeouts, ERA, complete games. He won the Cy Young and he finished 4th in the MVP balloting.
Wow, that. I've never really stopped to consider that. I wonder if you could make a case that might be one of the most incredible single individual seasons from a pitcher.
So we know who the MVP was in 1985, Kelly.
Willie McGee.
Willie McGee. And then second was Dave Parker.
Of the Reds, right? Not
Reds.
The Pirates.
34 homers, 125 RBIs, a .312 batting average.
Would have been Cobra's second MVP. He had a split one with Cardinal Keith Hernandez in 1978.
But his first MVP clean shaven.
Was he really?
Reds trivia.
No, that's what I'm here for, man.
No, you're going to make Franco and Bo Diaz shave their mustache. Even Dave Parker's going to lose that beard.
Third in voting was Pedro Guerrero.
Now, the future Cardinal.
He got some MVP votes as a Cardinal in 90 or 91 or whenever he dragged his leg and how should we put this, Andy? What do they argue on his behalf in court after that drug charge that he may not have been going to bat with both stacks or whatever he did to get out of that drug charge, but he was a heck of a ball player for the old ball club from St. Louis.
Yeah. So you remember when the Dodgers moved Pedro to third base?
And he straight for John
Tudor. Yes. And that was when Steve Sachs was going through the yips. And so Pedro once famously said that when he was playing third base, he would say a prayer before every pitch. First would be, please God, don't hit it to me. And then he said he would quickly sneak in before the pitch and please God, don't hit it to Sachs.
Sense of humor on Pete Guerrero.
Mm-hmm.
But just for the record, in 85, Kelly, Pete Guerrero would be an enemy of yours, right? Because he was still a Dodger and he'd face you in the playoffs.
In 85, I was 5 years old. So the only enemies of mine were GoBots and G.I. Joes and Teen Transformers. But yes, by 87, he was on the fearsome. 87 was really when I got.
I did not know that. Else. I did not know that Guerrero was on the. I knew he was a card. I thought he was more of the Joe Torre era. I didn't know he actually captured some of the Whitey Herzog glory. And
80 he traded to the Cardinals in September of 88.
Oh, so he missed the 87 World Series.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So I meant 87 was when I kind of hopped on to knowing about every game. Yeah, I was at a Wags restaurant in Arlington Heights, Illinois, and I found
was that
up on John Tudor?
Would that be the one on Palatine Road or the one?
Has to. Well, yeah. Which one?
There are like 7 in Chicago. Walgreens venture into Greek style breakfast style restaurants. Wags. Yeah,
So
the same font.
Turns out 85 was one of the years Pedro played third base. He had played 74. He played 157 games at third in 1983. Then it was down to only
just unsafe
76 and 84. In 85, he played 44 games in third, and then that was the end of that shit. So let's see. Other Cardinals to get MVP votes. Willie McGee obviously got the most. Then Tommy Herr finished 5th. John Tudor finished 8th. Jack Clark
110 RBI, 8 home runs.
John Tudor and then met Keith Hernandez tied for 8th. Jack Clark finished 10th.
Wow.
Vince Coleman 11th. The Cubs had one guy, Ryan Sandberg, finished 13th. Keith Moreland also got MVP votes. He finished 17th.
Zonk.
And Ozzie Smith finished 18th.
Wow. I don't want to bet.
Kelly, I didn't hear who you said. Who did the Cardinals trade up to get Guerrero to the Dodgers?
They traded John Tudor. And John Tudor helped. It was a win-win. John Tudor, I think, won a game in the 88 series.
Did he really? So he was still effective even after, like...
No, far from effective. Far from effective.
He won a game. Right.
He'd have, come out of nowhere with his... It's like, oh, okay, his arm is attached.
He kind of vultured a victory, is what you're saying.
But,
okay, because I don't have... I have a vague recollection of Tudor as a Dodger, but after hearing those numbers from 85 and the fact that he was 31, I almost feel like he shouldn't have been too effective after. But
and
he was. I feared Gooden too, obviously. I mean, both of those guys haunted our dreams. And Gooden was the guy that he kind of threw a fear into the Cubs in 84. And we'll talk more about that, Andy, when we cover 84. But the Cubs tattooed him a couple times in 84. And then I'm pretty sure they didn't beat him again until like 87. He was awesome against everybody, but he was even particularly menacing against the Cubs for a few years. And in 85, John Tudor definitely was.
The Mets with the worst.
Tudor did pitch the 88. Tudor pitched the 88 World Series. He pitched an inning and third. Didn't allow a run. Did not get a decision.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah,
he came back to the Cardinals and had another great year. Yeah, look at that. 12-4 with the Cardinals at age 36. 2.40 ERA, and then his arm fell off. He had to walk away.
When did he have the unfortunate incident with the fan?
I think it was 85. I didn't get to that point in Heck of a Year, the 1985 Cardinals story, but maybe it was 87. But you know what? 87 scans. Tom Bernanski will do that to someone. Probably 87.
Can you refresh my memory? I only have the vaguest of recollections of John Tudor's fan incident.
Oh, I've got it right. I've got it right here. Written by Bob Verdi. The headline: Cards season.
Really?
Oh, here it is.
Card season really hits fan.
Marvelous.
Oh, Verdi broke out the pros too. John Tudor wore that cold New England stare of his, befitting a man who always appears to have a headache. But now he also had a towel wrapped around his left hand and splotches of blood about his gray uniform. Seems he had attacked an electric fan, which was the only thing the St. Louis Cardinals hit all week.
Ouch.
Oh, that's
telling no lies.
After the World Series, huh? After the frustration?
Maybe he didn't get. I mean, every year the Cardinals would get to the postseason and they'd have Jim Lindemann as their cleanup hitter because everyone was injured.
Maine West finest. He was their opening day right fielder in '87.
It was
Jim Lindemann. Yeah, local guy. I keep track of all the local guys because they always told us who they were when they came up. Jim Lindemann. How about Mike Laga? Didn't he once hit a ball out of Busch Stadium? A foul ball out of Busch Stadium.
I don't know, but I mean, we should really check up on him having a squat on top of that AstroTurf for 120 games a year. Poor Mike Laga. Poor Randy Hunt. Poor Mike LaValliere, the left-handed catcher.
Tom Pagnozzi.
Pags. Yeah, Pags was. Oh, and your everyone's best friend Neil Allen was the starting relief hitter, the closer to start the year.
So we brought up Neil Allen before because Neil Allen was sort of a well-celebrated recovering alcoholic, I believe. And then we found out later that the reason that he came up with the Mets. He was a bright young prospect, and he got traded to the Cardinals for Keith Hernandez. Yep. What's the story there, Andy? What am I missing? Something like how.
Well, they traded Keith Hernandez because snorty, and they traded him for an alcoholic.
They traded a cokehead for an alcoholic.
Yes.
Right.
It's much more. Well, I mean, alcoholism is
trade for what you know.
It depends on your strengths too. Some guys might play better under the influence of blow. Some guys might, play better when they're drunk. So, I mean, it's not necessarily, universal. So maybe one of those sides was onto something.
So the Mets retired Keith Hernandez's his number on over the weekend, and he told a story that I either had forgotten or didn't know. When he got traded to the Mets, he was in the final year of a contract.
Mid-season 83, I believe, right? It would have been, yes.
What if the Cubs had signed Keith Hernandez and he had been the first baseman on the 1984 Cubs? How would things have been different?
Instead of moving Bull Durham from the outfield?
Yeah. How would Keith Hernandez have?
Because they obviously weren't married to Bill Buckner because they were forcing him out anyway. Yep. It's a good call, Andy. Interesting.
When you make that decision and put him in that, so obviously the error is still going to happen. We're all agreeing on that. It's still going to go through Hernandez's legs.
Which one? Buckner's or Durham's?
No, the Leon Durham one. It's the Cubs of the Cubs of the Cubs.
Keith Hernandez. Right. If that ball's hit to Keith Hernandez, that's an out.
I mean, again, I just in that blue uniform, that's tough for me to just So I agree, but the finest first base.
Something else might have happened. He might have, I don't know. Tripped
Tim
in
Rock
multiple
Reigns.
Ways and fell down the stairs at Jack Murphy Stadium, something. But he'd scoop that.
But Kelly's right. Like Leon Durham, he's my favorite, as I make clear, and I will stand by. But he was objectively an above-average defensive player.
That's true.
Good outfielder, good first baseman.
Keith was at the time the best defensive.
He probably was. Yeah.
And he would have been your Ozzie Smith, the guy that comes in and cleans it all up.
They may have played him in shortstop.
Left-handed shortstop.
It's no problem.
Snow problem indeed.
Do you remember when?
Imagine Hernandez in Wrigleyville in 1983. Oh no! that'd be trouble.
Especially after day game.
Hey, it worked out for Dennis Eckersley for
Smart Bar and Metro would be a chain by now. But yeah, Eck made it out.
Just because he completely salvaged his career by leaving the Cubs. That didn't mean anything. Who was, and I don't remember this, I thought it was Brian LaHare, but it's not Brian LaHare. Would you remember when the Cubs fans were trying to convince the Cubs, or people were like, why don't the Cubs just play Anthony Rizzo at third? Do you remember all that discussion? Because they had somebody else.
Oh, wait, serious?
It's moron fans who didn't know he was left-handed. Or who didn't know that you can't play a left-handed player at third base.
You can. I see, like Squires.
Rizzo played third base in a game for the Cubs.
Also played second because of the shift. I only know that because they had him on the rotisserie team that year.
Yeah, for a while he got a bunt. He
leave him at second.
Every time they would play the bunt defense and he had to come in and switch gloves, he technically was the second baseman.
Kelly, why am I struggling to figure out who the Cardinals' first baseman was in '85?
Clark.
Duh.
Total J-off.
Oh, Jack Clark?
They're not even Cardinals fans, yeah.
No, so I used to work with a woman. She's a good friend of mine. She's about a little bit, been around longer than I have. She's a little bit older than me, but very attractive woman, even when she was older when I knew her. But she told me stories, and this checks out, and because I'll share it now.
Is she currently dating Jets quarterback Zach Wilson?
No, but she did not date Jack Clark, but she dated another player whose name isn't brought up on this podcast. And I think I could. She didn't tell me the name. She didn't tell me the name of the player she was dating right away. until eventually I just said, so who was the player? She told me, but she told me the story first about how at the time the player was on the Padres, and I believe Jack Clark was on the Padres. And all these guys were married, but she was like, 28 years old, whatever, just enjoying her life. And, being this player's mistress, but they all went out to dinner and Jack Clark was in the group. And she just told me some story about what an, like almost inconceivable asshole Jack Clark was to some fan who had the temerity to ask for an autograph. Like, she was shook by it. And so I guess that's the only anecdote. I only bring that up to validate Kelly's assertion that from what he's heard from his sources that Jack Clark was a total jagoff. And I think even those of us that didn't have any sort of inside access, I think that was kind of the vibe that he gave off in the mainstream.
Okay, I'm going to guess who the guy was.
Yes.
Jack Clark played for the Padres in 89 and 90, so I'm going to guess it was John Kruk.
It was not John Kruk.
No. I thought it was Pags. I went with Pags.
I don't know if this guy would be on the well. Now there are two Pags because you just referenced Tom Pagnozzi as Pags.
Well, this
Kelly.
would be Mike
Pagliarillo.
Pagliarillo.
Oh, okay.
I was going to correct you and say, well, I thought Mike Pagliarillo was Pags. No, I don't know if this player was on the 89 Cubs, but he was, or 89 Padres, but he was a Cub. That's why his name came up.
Oh, Calvin Schiraldi.
Calvin Schiraldi.
Oh, gee, that would have been so gross.
Phil Stevenson?
Not Phil Stevenson.
Well, here, we got nothing better to do.
It's not Bruce Hurst. It's not Bruce Hurst. We can all agree on that.
He might not have been. Is that the only year that Jack Clark played for the Padres?
Former Cubs on the 89 Padres. Benito Santiago.
Future Cub. Yeah, they're all future. Yeah, okay.
Carmelo Martinez.
But not Benito.
No. Marvell Wynn.
My God, I mean, the fucking 89 Padres just riddled with past and future Cubs.
Darren Jackson.
None of those so far. No.
Andy Bennis.
Never a Cub.
Phil Stevenson.
Cardinal. No, you already said
Billy
him.
Cora.
This guy was a Padre in 89. Did you overlook him? You said Santiago, not Santiago, but he was.
I didn't hear the Cub qualifier, so he was an ex-Cub.
Oh, Mark Parent.
Mark Parent.
Mark Parent.
Yes, that's it.
Oh, he had a mullet.
She didn't mention his name because she didn't know I was a baseball. She like, what's the point of mentioning Mark Parent? And so after I got to know him, I'm like, so who is the guy? It's all right. His name was Mark Parent. I totally know Mark Parent. He's the guy that got picked off of second base during the Cubs' 1994 opening season 9-game home losing streak where Tom Trebelhorn was forced to stand out by the fire hydrant and answer questions from belligerent fans. And when somebody asked why Mark Parent got picked off a second, Trebelhorn said, I don't know, he's a dumbass. Go home and have another beer.
What did they eat that night? They made him like a nice chicken dinner or something. Like they made him like a cacciatore or something. But didn't he like eat Trebelhorn in the fire marshal house? Didn't they have a?
He may have. We all know firemen are great cooks, and so he would have been privy to a hell of a meal.
Yeah, have this cheeseburger we made in a shoe.
Right, poor guy. The Weasley front office is sending him out as a sacrificial lamb to keep the masses at bay. So, but yeah, point of the story, Jack Clark, I think pretty much by any angle, just a universally acknowledged jagbag. Yeah,
we hated it. I think he led the OPS in MLB in 87, or maybe the MLB in OPS. Okay. But he had a 4-figure OPS in 87, but he played like 80 games a year. And I remember he was just a schmuck. Or my dad clutching his Sun Times coming out of the driveway after Clark signed with the Yankees going, this guy, and he's doing a limp. This guy couldn't even make it to the, this is how he was getting it in the box last year, and he's limping around. Man, this is before I'm going to school. So yeah, we didn't like him. We didn't like him much.
You suffered him. Now I have to say that, of course, he hit a very iconic home run for you guys in the '85 playoffs. Again, you were only 5, but I'm sure you absorbed the lore off of
one of 3 home runs they hit in the playoffs that year.
Tom Niedenfuhr, and of course, Ozzie had one of the others, also off of Tom Niedenfuhr. Tom Niedenfuhr did not have a good LCS in 19.
Yeah, I think if we've realized anything from this podcast, this Lasorda was just the worst manager in the history of baseball. And
I'm here for this.
Pedro at third base, and let's bring Niedenfuhr out in his droopy, dripping mustache and 120-degree humidity, and let's let him. If Ozzie Smith is lighting you up from his wrong side, then
correct.
Was that?
Is it not?
Was that,
Is it not true that he never hit a left-handed homer from the left side his entire career? Is that right? I think it's something like that.
It's not so much we have the stats in front of us. It's just watching that swing. It's just the anti-Ken Griffey Jr. So it just sort of makes sense that would be the first. I think he hit it on a bounce, like a drop kick sort of thing. I think it bounced like a cricket thing off the AstroTurf. Yeah, like we were playing home run derby or something with a tennis ball, and he gets 100. He gets a run and a half for that shot. No, I don't remember that, but it was all part of the lore by '87.
Right, you'd have to know it.
Prepping me for these punchless wonders that could not hit their way out of a paper bag that yet were somehow still in it because they had turned, bloops into inside the park home runs.
They did, and they played decent defense. They were fat. That was the thing in the '80s. It was pre-steroids. Some teams had power. The Cardinals were totally known for just fucking running around the ballpark. I mean, Vince Coleman. How many stolen bases did he get in 1985?
110. 110.
Although I will tell you, there was a lot of hype. The very first Cubs-Cardinals game had to be before the 13-game losing streak, but Coleman was like 30 of 31 or something. And I can just this is anecdotal, but we could probably back it up if you had to, if you didn't believe me. But I will tell you that Vince Coleman on the Friday afternoon, very first Cubs-Cardinals series of the season, reached base in the top of the first, and Jody fucking Davis threw his ass out trying to steal second base. And his first stolen base attempt against the Cubs.
I thought you were going to say Steve Lake did it.
No. Lake was gone by 85. I don't know who they got to back up Jody in 85. Sumberg came along in 86 or 87. But
58 games for Lake in 85.
Yeah.
For the Cubs?
Yep.
I stand corrected. I apologize. My bad. Thank you. Wow. Kelly had a goddamn
151.
Kelly had a goddamn Steve Lake Topps card right there.
Right there.
He's the only other catcher listed. So I wonder if
all right.
Did Keith get Moreland to get Moreland in the squat anytime?
I think I confused Lake with Henry Cotto, who were the only two rookies on the '84 team, and they shipped off Cotto right away, who was Dernier's backup for the aforementioned Ray Fontenot and Brian Dayette. So,
well, that was a good deal.
Yeah, can't fault it.
All right, so Ozzie Smith in 6,281 left-handed at bats. How many home runs did he hit?
Regular season?
Yep.
2? Kelly?
Yeah, single digits. 8.
5.
All right.
He hit 23 from the other side. That was his power side.
28 homers.
28 home runs.
28 homers in 20 years.
Exact same number that Vince Coleman hit, by the way.
That's A-Rod in May of 1998 or something.
Right.
Well, Sammy Sosa.
Oh. Yeah, we all know the fact. Sammy has the record, 20 homers in June. The old record was Dale Long, and he would hit 18.
Yeah, I saw, speaking of the standing underneath the scoreboard, that Milwaukee game where he had 3 out. I got to be underneath the scoreboard for that one. The day after the Bulls won the 8th title. That was a lot of fun. Plus watching
98?
98, plus watching my buddy's Buick get towed right underneath us. I think I've told the story on the podcast before. Yeah, it was great. Sorry, Smitty.
Park right in front of Murphy's?
Oh, we just gave up. We were just like, we'll take it. We'll just deal with
Can't find parking.
Sammy already has like 1 home run. We're just a bunch of Hoosiers coming in from. I've been out of the suburbs for I've been living in Indiana for like 2 years at this point, 3 years. So we were hopeless. We had some police officers. We slowed down to talk to someone, and police officers that we thought were coming to help us, guide us to the Cubs park. We're like, go somewhere else to buy your drugs. We're like, whoa. Why don't you just arrest us for the drugs that we weren't trying, instead of just yelling something at us and then driving away? That seems like something we would do if we were police officers in that situation, because we would mess with people. But yeah, Sammy, June '98, beautiful. Yeah, Ozzie was hopeless, but that was why he fell in love with the team, is because it was just slap. Everything was doable. And Jack Clark, and
he was the one non-slappy, and then he had that big hit homer off of Niedenfuhr. So yeah, that was the formula.
It was.
And Tudor also sort of surpassed Joaquin Andujar. Wasn't Andujar? And I'm relying on your history more than your memory, because you were too young to remember 82. But Andujar was the ace in 82 and 83. He won 20 games in 84. I remember.
Worse temper than Tudor.
Tudor basically passed him up, and then. They had good pitching. I can't think of anybody besides Tudor and Andujar. They used to have John Stupor, but I don't think he was that good.
Danny Cox. Bob Forsch. He was
Danny
still
Cox.
hanging around.
Actually
Danny
decent.
Cox, who is also, just perpetually 500. Danny Cox. Hey, I'm Danny Cox. I'm 10 and 12 this year.
Yeah,
Every year.
85 Cardinals had 3 guys win at least 18 games. John Tudor won 21, Joaquin Andujar won 21, and Danny Cox won 18.
Wow.
And then, of course,
Joaquin
the great
Andujar.
Kirk Kepshire won 10.
I remember Kirk Kepshire.
Andujar was drafted in 1969, so that's what you're dealing with by 85 with this Cardinals staff. But yeah, he was the guy that lost his stuff in the Game 7 of that year. He was a fine pitcher, and his arm just fell off.
He was originally an Astro, I remember.
Yeah, he's for the A's for a
best
bit.
years for you guys. Oh, he's with the A's. Nice.
And he did well ever since. No,
he started and ended his career.
Oh no! Here's my Todd Worrell. The Todd Worrell fact is that he was the closer by the playoffs in '85, but then won the Rookie of the Year the subsequent season. So he was a rookie in '85, and then he actually won the award in '86.
He grew more of a Fu Manchu in '86, so it was more of like a confusion deal. Where in '85, he had it wasn't so much that he didn't pitch enough innings in '85. It was just the writers back then thought he was an entirely different person.
Nice.
Holtzman was really confused. It was just
Jerome was getting
yeah. They couldn't remember if it was Tim that was on the team last year or Todd.
Did Suter get hurt then? Is that Andy? I mean, because Suter had saved 45 the year before. I know
he was a free agent.
Oh,
and he left for the
Braves
trip
before. Wait, really? Before 85?
Before 85, he left for he left for Ted Turner's Billions.
Yeah, I remember that. I thought that I didn't know that was 80. I thought it was after 85, not after 84. I had no idea.
I only know this because I looked up the Sports Illustrated thing earlier. It has
holy shit.
Fact,
so they had a void. What the hell was their plan? I wonder. Before Worrell saved their ass.
Given a roster full of Bible thumpers and teetotalers, manager Whitey Herzog, who is not known to be either, imported a preacher to conduct motivational chapel services. Reliever Neil Allen is not so sure. Quote, God is in Atlanta, he says, referring to Suter. So that's Neil Allen's confidence.
I like Neil Allen. I'd like to go out drinking with him if he didn't,
He gave up a game win, or he gave up the aforementioned permy-haired kid hit a game-winning home run in Shea Stadium off of him on opening day with Allen in the reliever role. He did not blow a save. He was just in there in a tie ball game.
Who's the permy-haired kid? Sorry.
Oh, Gary Carter.
Oh yeah. The opening day '85, which was the same day that right. That was because Ivan DeJesus. I remember watching that game on WOR, flipping between that and the thrilling Cubs Pirates Steve Stone debut with Dwayne Stats. That the Mets and the Cardinals played an extra inning game that Carter hit the walk. I know exactly the game you're talking about.
Isn't it fun watching the other team always play the Mets? Like just watching, being
a kid. Being a kid in '85, obviously GN was in our house all the time, and the Cubs were all day games, so watched thousands of innings there. But having TBS, which I didn't care so much about, but every Braves game was on TBS.
They got the AOS teams there, which were rare and unique, and you get to see the Padres.
I know what, right? And then, but WOR was a little more sporadic because they didn't have all of the Mets games, but I was obviously more tapped into watching the Mets games on OR with Ralph Kiner. And, Tim McCarver, I think, the aforementioned. A few other guys. I can't remember now. It's been a while.
But yeah, just hated the Mets. Did not think twice, and just
we had that in common.
Today. Yeah,
because and I've told Andy this. I didn't hate the Cardinals in '85.
Yeah,
I hated the Mets. And it's kind of weird. I should have hated the Cardinals because they were in contention. They weren't necessarily a competitor of the Cubs in '84. That was the Mets and Expos, and then just the Mets. It felt like
they were just as hateable.
But not as much. The most hateable. The Mets were so much more hateable.
Well, I mean, just against any other Cardinal team.
I was more annoyed by the Cardinals. I was more annoyed by the Cardinals because of that slappy offense and the artificial turf and nobody could fucking hit the ball more than 290 feet except for Jack Clark, and yet they would win 97 games and go to World Series and shit like that. So I was jealous, but I didn't hate them as much as I hated the Mets.
But the Mets were the trash. The Mets were the
so
ones
hateable.
That were, yeah.
We got that in common.
I mean, I didn't think about the Cubs. Not that because when the Cubs were great in '89, I was rooting for them. It was
right. You were living up here. You were
I was living
here,
up there, right? And it was all my buddies had a team, and it was great. It was just like the Mets were the ones you had to worry about with Drake. Look at what I got. Mike Bielecki autograph photo.
Mike Bielecki made his major league debut in 1985, and at some point served up a home run to Rick Sutcliffe.
He made it. He was on 85. Wow.
Yeah, Andy pointed out that in '84 he was in Hawaii and he had like a 23-6 record, and then for his as a reward he got promoted to Pittsburgh.
He's like, fuck this. I think I'll stay at AAA.
I'm pretty sure it was Tidewater, but okay, I'll buy it.
Same thing. So Neil Allen in 1985 was 1-4 with a 5.59 ERA. He had 2 saves. Jeff Lottie was their primary closer until Worrell showed up. He was 5-2 with a 184 and 19 saves, and Ken Daly chipped in 11 saves for the Cardinals.
Lefty.
And Bob Forsch got 2. He did a little
they got Ken Daly for Oberfell.
Finishing.
They got Ken Daly for Oberfell?
Yeah, so
they sent Oberfell to the Braves. That's where they got Daly from, right?
What a just a really bad trade.
Bob Forsch once threw a no-hitter and then is now in the record books because his brother Ken also threw a no-hitter. I believe the only 2 brothers to throw no-hitters. Yeah, Bob Forsch. Bob Forsch still in the 85. He was not part of that troika of dominance that included Danny Cox and Joaquin Nieto and John Tudor, but Bob Forsch still plugging away in '85. Is that right? Did he
was.
Get a World Series start?
He oh God,
probably not.
He was there till '88.
I mean, okay.
I'm trying to see. Maybe he seems like the sort of guy Whitey would send out even like the start of series. Like throw Forsch at him.
You might
see how they take that. I'm not as good with baseball references as I am with other things. All I can tell you is Bob Forsch's talking head is all over A Heck of a Year, the story of the 85 Cardinals, available on YouTube. He describes the joy that he gets from watching the team play with a team like the Cardinals, where everyone gets to bat and everyone gets to pitch. Well, not everyone, sure. 4 or 5 guys, and everyone gets to field if the ball's hit to them. And it makes Ryan Sandberg sound like William F. Buckley or something. It's just Bob Forsch is don't watch Heck of a Year, the story of the 85 Cardinals. Don't do it. It's not all that fun unless you're from Missouri. And then if you're from Missouri, how did you get on the internet?
Sure. I will say a workman-like season by Forsch at the ripe old age of 35. He threw 136 innings as the 5th starter, 3 complete games, a shutout. He actually saved 2 games, probably bridging folks from Neil Allen to Todd Worrell, but he was 9-6. But yeah, 35-year-old still plugging away. I'm trying to see if Whitey did actually rely on him in the postseason. If so, I don't know.
They had Cesar Cedeno. They had Tito Landrum. They had Andy Van Slyke, who finally he was their Dunston, and they were trying to make him earn the spot, and he finally did that year.
Who was their Dunston? Van Slyke, you said?
Van Slyke, yeah, he was like a 1st-round pick, and it took a while.
He was. Yeah, I remember Van Slyke as a Pirates prospect.
They moved Lonnie Smith for him at the beginning of '85, and Van Slyke had two good, okay years of the Cardinals, and then they moved him to the Pirates, and he was immediately like an MVP candidate in '88.
I had that backwards. He came up as a That's right. He came up as a Cardinal, and then he has best years with Pittsburgh.
That's right. Daryl Porter, they couldn't find him for a couple of weeks, so they decided they had to trade for Tony Pena, and that's how we lost
Mike Shannon's bar.
I think then it was just that whole strip mall with the comedy clubs and the laser tag in the 80s in St. Louis was just a thing, guys.
Daryl had a fistful of quarters and plenty of places to amuse himself.
Oh, Daryl. Oh, DP. Oh, Daryl.
There was a player on the 1985 Cardinals who managed in between Hall of Fame managers.
A player on the 85 Cardinals?
Yes, who then managed the Cardinals. And the guy he replaced was a Hall of Fame manager, and the guy who replaced him was a Hall of Fame manager. Do you know who that guy is?
Can I cheat by looking at the 85 Cardinals roster?
Yeah.
And by the way,
I can see the guy that was played in a movie by, I can't remember the fella's name. I can see the guy that was in the movie Moneyball as the manager. I do not see the between MVPs.
Oh yeah, Art Howe was in '85. I give Mike a minute, and if he can't, we'll just.
Was it Vince Coleman? It was Vince Coleman.
It was Vince Coleman. Yeah.
He's just the manager type.
He got fired for throwing fireworks at some of the fans.
Now, remember, he just dropped the fireworks away from the Jeep as the Jeep sped away. Any torque that resulted in the sort of a jet stream that results in the fireworks approaching the children was not the fault of anyone on the 1991 Mets.
I guess that's right. All right,
Who else was in that Jeep?
You give up, Mike? You've muted yourself. You're so excited about this that he's managed to mute himself.
And it wasn't Lonnie Smith.
It wasn't Lonnie Smith. All right. While Mike tries
Jurgensen.
to figure out his... or do you have the answer?
So Mike Jurgensen?
He's waving no. He's miming. He's pantomiming. This is good for an audio podcast.
Hold up a Mike Bilecki autographed card.
Yeah, did you just say it, Kelly?
A Mike Jurgensen?
Mike Jorgensen. He replaced Joe Torre, and then he was replaced by Tony La Russa.
Sorry, I couldn't remember that. Try not to pay attention to baseball in the 90s. There was no slap hitting. Not enough slapping. I missed all the slapping. It was more just, tying one on and sending it out. Hal Lanier on the coaching staff. Johnny Lewis, 62-year-old Ren Shane East, who looked about 112. 62. He's 20 years older than me. He looks 400 years old then. Nick Leyva, 31-year-old first base coach. So Nick Leyva apparently never played the sport of baseball is what I'm trying to glean from this. He just went right to the managing. Good eye for talent, Whitey. These are some future names. Lanier went on to not replace Whitey.
So Lanier managed the Astros. Leyva managed the Phillies. I forget who else he said. Yeah. It was quite. It was like their own little. Red had already been put out to pasture, right? He was only 62 then.
He's only 62. He coached the team that came out of the field in Field of Dreams. That was his squad. This is a real high school of coaches, of managers we're looking at here. This is a crew. Whitey Herzog was 53 in 1985. No. So who's older, Whitey Herzog or Wilford Brimley? Let's go.
Well, one of them's still alive, so I guess he's technically older.
So that means Whitey wasn't even. He was 50 when the Cubs when the Cardinals won the World Series.
Yeah. Wow. He's 3 years older than Wilford Brimley. Yeah, and I'm Hal Lanier's age.
He's 3 years older when Wilford Brimley led the Knights to the pennant, or just 3 years older than Wilford Brimley when Wilford Brimley died? Oh, 3 years older at that point.
Older in real life. But the Wilford, God, I mean, so the Wilford Brimley that was managing the Knights in that movie was younger than the Cocoon one. Yes. Oh, my God. That guy looked like he was 92.
Yep.
Never eat oatmeal, children. Terrible for you. Yeah, Whitey, Vince Coleman came up. Danny Cox was born in Great Britain. Wow, no wonder he was not great at baseball.
He's excellent at rounders.
Yeah, he just kept one. He's like, why do I have to come in now? Why can't we just stay out here for a day and a half?
I did just want to circle back to one thing because I found it was funny. You guys were both I don't know who said it, but the idea of a 35-year-old fifth starter, Bob Force, somebody said, well, Whitey might have just thrown him out, in a playoff game. And sure enough, Bob Force did get a start against the Dodgers in the playoffs that season. So good call on Whitey's inclinations.
He knows the angles. He knows that team up and down. He knows the third baseman's a little shaky, and then their second base. Why didn't we call the yips the saxes? Why didn't we just switch on that? The yips are like golf. Baseball needs its own thing.
I'd like to introduce that.
The saxes. Because blasses is like that doesn't work. You can't do plural blasts. Is that the guy from the Pirates that had it? Blass.
Steve Blass had it. I mentioned that Fergie kind of had a little bit of it in his second go around with the Cubs in '83, around the same time that Sachs had. Maybe it was contagious. The other thing I have to mention this because it strikes me is that the game that Whitey started Bob Force was the pivotal game 5. It was a 2-2 series. He sends out Bob Force, and Bob Force only goes 3 1/3 innings, 3 hits, 2 walks, 2 earned runs. He got pulled. It was almost like Whitey was way ahead of his time and just treated Bob Force
was Bob Force the Jason Hamill of the 1985 Cardinals?
Yes. But even Hamill only started the game 4 against the Mets. Like they had gone through the rotation. Maybe somebody was hurt. Maybe Joaquin was, driving around lost and couldn't make the start.
Hamill also started
with himself
game 4 against the Cardinals, and contributed more with his bat than he did.
That game?
Because he got the hit that sent John Lackey into fits of lackiness.
Yeah.
Got him so mad, then he started screaming, "Throw the fastball!" And Javi took the first pitch and hit it into the bleachers.
Well, you made me upset, and now so I have to return the favor by pointing out that Danny Jackson was the starter for the Royals in that game.
Ouch! Yeah, we pilloried him.
All-time favorite Cub, Danny Jackson.
Over Dave Smith? You're gonna take him over Dave Smith? All right,
well, it's all right.
Yeah. Jackson was really disappointed. Basically, it was the Ozzie Smith game that Bob Force started. There's your trivia. When Ozzie hit that homer, Jack Buck told everybody to go home.
Well, that's the
35-year-old.
Go home, everybody. Go home. He told him to go crazy, not go home.
Whatever. Go home.
Go home, everybody. Go home.
Get out of here.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Busch Stadium 2.
Yeah, exactly. He's used to talking to his colleagues in the booth. Okay, time to go home. That's enough.
All right,
they don't want to wait.
All right,
for
Joe,
you to
pack up
up.
your stuff. We're going.
Right. And here's $20 for a cab, Mike. Yeah.
Angrily punched an electrical fan, cutting his. First of all, when you're punching something, why are you leading with your strong hand to begin with? Okay.
That's what made any sense. You're not supposed to punch.
Not smart.
I mean,
let alone
Crash Davis taught Nuke LaLoosh that in a bar.
Oh,
you ever take a swing at some drunk with your right hand?
I've never seen that movie all the way through. That's probably why I didn't get into that frat. That was it. I'm just reading up in this horrifying Game 7 where the Cardinals just acted like a bunch of little babies. We wouldn't have to be here. Yeah. You know what? Well, just beat them to first base, okay?
But Todd Worrell would say he did.
Yeah, beat them by 1.5, okay? Make it like it's got to beat the replay, so you have to win it. And I went to college in Missouri briefly, and just having to hear from a bunch of people my age that had no recollection of that game because again they were 5, who were not watching it in real time, and if you were watching it, you're just making it up, pretending that they were so upset about that they were so upset in their kindergarten class the next day or something like. No, you weren't. You were 5. You didn't see it. You heard about it later when ESPN told you they had to be upset about. The Cardinals were in the World Series every year.
Sure.
No one cared. It was a thing that didn't happen. It was I'm not trying to kiss up to Cub fans, but in terms of gut punches, going into a Game 7 in 03 versus going into a Game 7, in your own state in 1985, grow up a pair. Grow up.
I do appreciate the parallel, though, because until this moment, I didn't really quite consider that the gut punch of a game in which you're still afforded a second chance, and then you kind of shit the tub. But Joaquin is the one that melted down, right?
Joaquin,
They all did, but Joaquin was really not in a position. Probably because he was, I don't know, Joaquin seems like maybe a fun guy. He was probably already mentally checked out when the 9th inning started in Game 6. I don't have to pitch tomorrow. I'm going to start.
He had led the league in innings pitched the year before. And
he was done. He checked out. He's like, oh, fuck, I got to pitch tomorrow. It's bullshit that Gringo totally misses the call.
Led the league in hit by pitches 2 years in a row.
Yeah. He was a red ass
kind of guy. Yeah,
he was like a Zambrano-esque. He was kind of a Zambrano-esque.
He was
pitcher.
Carlos.
Entirely who I thought of when Carlos came.
But he couldn't hit. He was like Carlos without the bat.
Got it.
Carlos would have had the 5th best.
Joaquin
OPS
didn't.
On this
Joaquin, probably. He would have had the second most homers at least.
Yeah.
So Tudor started Game 7. Gave a 5
in '85.
Joaquin pitched in relief.
The Mandela effect
and threw
here.
his fit.
Let's let him sweat in the bullpen and come in. So he doesn't think he has to work at all.
And it looks like by the time he came in, they were already down 10-0.
Oh, so somehow there's a Mandela effect. We all assume that Andujar just, his temper got the best of him.
Well, he threw a fit, right? Didn't he?
Yeah, I remember that the game was out of reach. I remember that part. But
by the time he got ejected,
it was the next day. Okay, so the missed calls a Saturday. Game 7 was on a Sunday, and they just couldn't handle themselves.
That just makes the corollary to the Cubs 03 even stronger because you got John Tudor.
Yeah.
And we had Kerry Wood, so it just
Joaquin Andujar pitched to 2 batters in Game 7. He came in with it already 10-0. No, 9-0. And gave up a base hit to Frank White that drove in a run. And then he walked Jim Sundberg. And then he was replaced by Bob Forsch. It all comes back to Bob Forsch.
Oh, good old Bob. I think that game probably had less to do with who was pitching for the Cardinals than who was pitching for the Royals.
Which is why I think the Cardinals threw such a fit in losing Game 6. They didn't want it. They were screwed having to face Brett Saberhagen in Game 7, and they knew it.
Yep. It was Saberhagen was the one that was given a lifeline with a Denkinger call. Wow.
And Lonnie Smith scored 2 runs in the game. Good for him. Shove it in our face.
Lonnie was interesting because he was a young guy on the 80 Phillies. And then he, of course, as you know from your history, he was an 82 Cardinal, right? And then he would be he was on the Royals in 85, right?
Yeah.
So he was like this weird, useful, outfielder that was finding himself on these World Series teams. And then it ran out in 91. Of course, he might have been on another World Series. But 91, he was on the Braves, and it was his own base running mistake that would have prevented him from being a guy that would have won being a pivotal member on 4 World Series teams.
Oh, he was pivotal.
But he was
pivotal.
He was a very useful player.
Oh, heck yeah.
The 85 Cardinals set a World Series record. Did you know what it was?
Diapers per inning.
They had the lowest batting average of any team in a World Series ever.
Oh my!
They hit 185 for the series.
Wow.
Mind you, that's a 7-game sample size, so that's legit. That's not like a weekend. That's that's
40
a fortnight's worth of baseball.
40 hits in 7 games.
The 1966 Dodgers, who I believe were shut out 4 times by the Jim Palmer-led Baltimore Orioles, completely woeful. So it says a lot but that was I believe a 4-game sweep or maybe a 5-game series. So to Kelly's point, a 7-game series to continue to be that woeful.
Tito Landrum had nearly a quarter of their hits in the World Series. He had 9 of the 40 that they got. Tito was quite the postseason star.
He was.
Tommy Hurt. The White Sox.
Yeah, that's the White Sox. That's 2 years removed from when he broke the Sox fans' hearts in the LCS. Big homer off of Britt Burns.
I remember I liked him because his name was Tito. I didn't know anything about him other than he had an afro and his name was Tito. I thought he was
an afro.
And I'm pretty sure Tito came up with the Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken. I think this was his second go-around when he was on the 85 team.
It was.
Yeah.
Good old Tito. Was your dad a Cardinals fan, Kelly?
Yeah, well, we don't. I've never really asked how it started. Yeah, because why do you want to ask about that? Why did were you guys all click like crazy racists in the 30s, or what happened? I think there were 2 sets, and there still are 2 sets of Dwyers, one in St. Louis and one in Chicago. And I think the first crew of first, second, whatever generation, third, fourth, fifth, had wanted nothing to do with baseball, and then some part of the family got the bug in St. Louis, and so grandfather. Yeah, grandfather, father, and then me. And it was, to me, it just was never a weird, it was just not an odd thing. It was, I don't know why. It was before cable TV and all that. So it wasn't like a kid in the 90s growing up where like your favorite teams, the Cowboys and the Bulls and the Braves or something. But, it held up in the suburbs because the Cubs were, even when they weren't great, they still were 5 all-stars. They still were fun. They still were on
we had our
TV
guys
all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Buckner, Kingman, even to the earliest. I only asked because that 85 season, if he was a diehard, I mean, that's you know it more secondhand.
Yeah.
But,
he was up all night after Deckinger, but again, there's a game the next day.
Right.
Yeah. I remember.
We were up all night after Bartman. Same thing. We got a game the next day.
I remember up all night after Game 7 in '87, not only because they'd lost the season, but I think we had taped over the Roy Orbison Black and White Night concert on VHS and keeping that Game 7. I might be wrong about that. That may have been like some Katarina Witt thing. That my years might be messed up on. VHS technology was nascent, and we were still trying to decide between beta and it depended on what your parents' tastes were into. But yeah, it was fun growing up as a Cardinals fan. But weird because they were also, like you said, they're the only team that wasn't on like a national TV situation back then. But every Saturday they're on NBC.
Yeah.
Bob Costas trying to suck up to all of our grandmothers and aunts and uncles.
Bob's good at that.
Do you think if the Deckinger thing happened now, if Cub fans would buy Cub jerseys and put Denkinger and his umpire number on the back, like there's Cardinal fans who go out and spend $180 to get Cardinals Bartman 03 jerseys and wear those around?
And how do you know that, Andy? Because you can see them when they do the wave.
Oh, good.
They stand up and show you.
Yeah.
Close game against the Dodgers today. Doing the wave right in the middle of it.
Oh, they were doing it in the 9th inning of a tie game against the Cubs.
Yeah, how's a fella like Packy Naughton supposed to keep his composure in a situation like that? I ask.
Yeah.
No, I'm not happy among other Cardinal fans. I like the ones I like online, but it was never like. First of all, there were never any in school. It wasn't like
right.
That's a weird thing. It'd be like finding a Reds fan or something because they were in the same division.
It was Cubs or Sox or nothing.
Yeah, and it was a weird. I was a weird kid, still am. And
Andy, maybe Cubs and Brewers,
but
no,
again,
there weren't any Brewer fans.
Yeah, Brewer AL.
Yeah, that's true.
But it was awesome. I'm a slapper. I love the slaps. That's why I got into I enjoyed the Walt Herniak White Sox for a while because they ruined everyone on that team's batting stance with that let's slap
Sosa,
it to the opposite
Sammy
field
Sosa spent years ragging on Herniak after he got out of Chicago, but Herniak was sort of Ted Williams.
Yeah, he was the genius that told everyone to not try to get home runs but the Cardinals were pre-Herniak, but just as slappy, and it just made sense when there wasn't like a conversation. It's just one day you're a baseball fan, and that's the team you're already rooting for, in spite of Tommy Herr.
Yes, in spite of Tommy Herr.
In spite of. God, Ricky Horton. I mean, of all the players to bring back as an announcer, they bring back Horton and Jim Edmonds just to mess with us, just to mess with the Cardinal fans with half a conscience about listening to Jim Edmonds and his let me hold up on these fly balls to center field so I can get my uniform dirty and it's a rough listen as Cardinal fans. You always have to go with the away package on the MLB League Pass. It's It's not a happy existence, and you're trying to concentrate, and they do the wave, and you go to the stadium and you make jokes, and no one gets them. They try to sell you a Tino Martinez bobblehead, and you're like, I don't want one of these. He wasn't any good, but in the playoffs every other year for the last 50 years, and it would have been every year if it weren't for Mr. Matheny blowing 6 games a year every year when the Cardinals were 1 game out of the wild card every year and proven to be able to win a World Series after eking in. It's been a fun ride. I have no complaints. I'm going to have to lock my Twitter account now after this podcast, but still.
Well, that's all right. Mike is in Kansas City now, where he's in charge of the vaccine program for the Royals.
You're going to get a needle up Whit Merrifield?
I enjoyed that Whit today basically said, well, if I get traded to a team that might actually make the playoffs, I probably will get the vaccine, but I'm not getting it for the fucking Royals. So no,
that's just
screw that.
They deserve that. And the Cardinals are going to have, Cardinals going to have to be excused from the playoffs this year if that's the case, because every single one on that team, even with Matt Carpenter not there to goad everyone into it, he's still on like the group chats, he's still in the text message threads, he's still waving that left hand, he's waving the salsa around for A-Rod to smell. Get a good whiff of
the greatest A-Rod smelling the closed jar of salsa. One of the great moments in Sunday Night Baseball history. And doing it repeatedly, to show how into it he was.
Yeah. Like he's in, the Mediterranean quaffing an espresso. Instead it's a jar of Matt Carpenter's Escalade in the middle of August. Have a whiff of my mason jar. This is the 1 month I'm actually hitting through the shift.
Matt, are there tomatoes in this?
Shot of Matt Carpenter just squeezing little individual packets of ketchup into 32 mason jars for all his teammates. No, it's been fun. I love the Cardinals. It's been great. Every 6 years they get a guy that I don't hate rooting for. But, it's hard. You get Gerald Perry. Sometimes you get a person of color. It's but other than that, it's just Matt Carpenter and Miles Mikolas rubbing sage and drumming up support for candidates I'm not in favor of. It's fun. It's fun. Didn't Eckstein do a commercial against do one of that commercial that Rush Limbaugh got in trouble for one year? Or no, that was who was that pitcher for the Cardinals that later went on to the Brewers? It was like 04, 06. I think he ended up a Cub. I can't recall. The Cardinals are full of terrible people. Every year in and year out. But, good on base percentage.
Is it Jeff Supan?
Yes, Jeff Supan.
Yes, Jeff Supan. I think we've lost Mike again. We can see him laughing. He's laughing at everything.
Yeah, he's laughing.
We can't hear him.
He doesn't know why I keep interrupting him.
Yeah, he's they're just talking right over me. It's like, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Or at least we're pretending we can't hear you.
I actually I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong when I said Jeff Supan. And nobody acknowledged it until Andy said it. I'm like, you just stole my fucking line. I didn't have the indicator that my mute was out.
I read your lips. Well, it wasn't muted. Looks like your microphone just wasn't working that time.
Something is going on with my headphones.
You went out at the beginning of the losing streak. So we're like 8 games into it.
Yep.
All right, we're gonna have to re-record.
I just started to tell a story. Well, you said something about Jerry Sloan not being at the camp?
I don't know who the fuck Grail Gilkey is, but all right, whatever.
No, let's start over. All right, I'll tell that story.
Kelly's got a tab open with his name on it for later.
That's right. There is the article if you have Tribune access.
So on the marquee broadcast the night we're taping this, Google's McGregor was talking about some guy who is like whatever their phony baloney. What's the name of the Captain Morgan Club? The guy is like not maitre d', whatever he is. And she's like, you know him. It's like, yeah, because so many of us have been in the Captain Morgan Club, and we know Gus, or whatever his name was. But she said he's been with the Cubs forever, and his favorite player was an 84 and 85 Cub. And not a guy you would expect. His favorite Cub of all time was Ron Say. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, but that's the wrong answer.
That's the wrong answer.
No. Ron Say, who spent, 4 middling seasons with the Cubs?
Yes.
232 and 85.
Yeah, but he did hit 28 homers in 84, right, Kelly? You see that?
25 and 84, 24 and 83.
Yeah.
Career high 30 with the Dodgers in 1977.
Yeah. Ron Say was definitely the end of his career, and he already had, limitations due to his stubby legs and whatnot.
It seemed like such an odd, it's fine to say, I kind of liked Ron Say.
Right.
But to work for the Cubs for 50 years and he's your favorite Cub.
Right. It's not like Gary Matthews flipping the helmet off his head as he's rounding second base, and so many other better, more exciting choices.
Among the weird ones.
Right.
I mean, my favorite is Vance Law, but 88 was special, guys.
Yeah,
special.
1988 All-Star Vance Law.
That is a weird. That's like, who is that? That's like my favorite bowl is Darrell Walker. My favorite. No, Ron Say was better than that. But is that
Darrell Walker, the 12th man in the 93
12th
Bulls?
man in the 93 Bulls. That's
Nice.
that's such an inappropriate favorite Cub. But then again, working at the famed Bacardi 151 Fire Lounge.
Like, I hope he gets a job at the sports book. Maybe they can save him a slot over there. So looking at the 85 Cub roster, we're talking about how they were, we looked at that team, I'm sure, at the time as the 84 Cubs only better because now that Shawon Dunston was coming up, they got a full season of Davy Lopes.
Who's consecutive stolen base record, which he himself had set and was about to eclipse late in his career, was ended on the watered-down infield of Atlanta Fulton County Stadium on the same day that Rick Sutcliffe, who of course had won the Cy Young the year before, tried legging out a double play and instead pulled his hamstring. Steve Stone was very quick on the dirty pool of the Atlanta Braves grounds crew, watering the infield so much that poor old Davy Lopes had to have his burgeoning stolen base streak snapped, and that Sutcliffe would be put on the DL for like 2 months because of that. So
it had nothing to do with the fact that Rick Sutcliffe was 30 pounds overweight. It had nothing to do with it. And were they watering the infield to slow down 40-year-old Davy Lopes? Is that what the Braves were like? Fucking Lopes is not stealing 4 bases in this game.
He was fast for his old age and clearly some crafty motherfucker. He was like he had set a record himself as in his prime Dodger second baseman in that infield with the aforementioned Ron Say and Bill Russell and Steve Garvey. And he set a mark, consecutive stolen bases without getting caught, and then it got broken. And then he shows up with the Cubs as like a corner outfielder, pinch hitter, old guy, but he still stole bases. And he made a run at his own record until that fateful day in Fulton County.
In 85, Davy Lopes was 47 for 51 stolen bases.
Incredible.
Incredible.
Wow.
They had gotten him.
SPs.
Yeah, it was Rhino's season high, career high for stolen bases too.
They got him in 84, but not until August 31st, so he wasn't on the playoff roster. Or did
right.
I don't remember. They couldn't do any chicanery to get him on the playoff roster.
I think he was, and Jay Johnstone, our friend, ended up being like the odd man out or something like that. I somehow maybe I got that wrong. Because I think back then that was still considered under the wire.
Jay Johnstone always was.
He did. He played in 2 games in the 84 playoffs.
Yeah, it was his former teammate Jay Johnston's expense.
He somehow was caught stealing 9 times in 2 games. No, he batted once. Looks like must have pinch run. He was the.
Yeah.
I don't want to bring up our old friend from the 2019 playoffs. I'm not even going to say it.
Billy Hatcher, 12 doubles in 53 games. I love a Billy Hatcher.
I love Billy Hatcher, and I'm positive that maybe it was the next year. How many years did he play for the Cubs? I know I wrote in Billy Hatcher as an all-star in one of my trips to Wrigley.
Probably 87. I remember how popular he was. I talked about the Jerry Sloan camp when like who the fuck is Darren Jackson and playing for Bob Dernier, and Jackson was terrible and got sent down, and Hatcher came up, and I remember my sister was like, why wasn't that guy called up the first time he got hurt? They called up Darren Jackson instead. But Hatcher was always seemed to like kind of inspire our imagination. He had his moments, He had a huge World Series for the Reds in 1990. And
it wasn't that big. He only hit
750
in the World Series.
He also had a huge homer against the Mets in '86 in the LCS as a member of the Astros. Yeah.
His career postseason stats in playoffs total, he hit 404. He hit 300 in 2 NLCSs, and he hit 750. And it wasn't like he was 3 for 4. He was 9 for 15. So
that's pretty badass.
Is that right? Is that 750? 9 for whatever. I just looked. 9 for 12. 15 at bats, 3 walks.
I just don't know how all these Cubs teams survived on the duel, just with all that rough-hewn masculinity in the clubhouse between Brian Dayette and Jay Baller. That's just too much man for me.
Jay Baller, it's easily one of the great baseball cards of all time. It's the Jay Baller. Just the chest hair pouring out of that thing. The stash. It's just majestic.
87.
Yeah, Dayette
he was one of the guys. He was one of the guys that made his debut in '85 when all those pitchers got hurt. Dave Engel, Jay Baller. I don't remember who else, but yeah.
Yeah, everybody in Tidewater had to come up, play for the Cubs at some point.
Yeah, right up the river from this imaginary Tidewater that Kelly Dwyer made up. Steve Trout. Oh my God, this is a staff.
Telling you.
So 80, I believe this. I looked this up for a column. I'm pretty sure 85 was the year that Steve Trout fell off the exercise bike.
Could have been.
It looks like it. I've seen his picture from that year.
I just know there's that, and then he also got traded in '87 after throwing consecutive shutouts.
Hey, traded him at the top of his value.
But you're right, and it wasn't just a bike, right? Did you say stationary bike?
Yeah,
Andy?
he was on an exercise bike in the spacious clubhouse.
I don't want to say that
fell right out of it and hurt himself.
I don't want to say that causation equals or whatever they say. I'm not saying there's a relationship, but Steve Trout was known to, have enjoy.
He was known to correlate.
Well,
he correlated a bit.
He was known to correlate his nose with certain white powders.
I don't know if it was that. Everybody famously, his family, they had a chronic inner ear problem. You remember what his dad's name was? His dad's name was Dizzy Trout. So maybe that's all that happened was Steve got up on the bike and channeled the old man and fell right off the bike.
Well, he just had some vestibular difficulty.
All that stuff in there is related. It's all it's all the same pipes. I just don't know how any of these guys survived Wrigleyville in the 80s. That was just the most yuppie rock, Heineken in one hand and a whatever. Oh, boy.
It really started to after 84. It became more of a destination. So within short order, lights came by in 88. Property values shot up by the end of the 80s. So, yeah, they were in the thick of it. These guys. And they're playing all day games. So, they're done with work at, 6 o'clock.
Do you know what player led the 85 Cubs in OPS?
Was it Chico Walker?
No, close.
Was it Brian Dayette?
It was Thad Bosley.
Pinch hitter extraordinaire.
Thad Bosley in 108 games hit .328 with a .391 on base and a .511 slug. Wow. So he's so impressed Jim Fry that in 108 games, Jim Fry got him 180 at bats. Yeah. On an injury-riddled team. Well, he can only pinch hit. So we're not going to be able to play him in the outfield.
He's 28. It's not like he's in his prime or anything.
But it's funny, Andy.
Behind him.
Andy, you mentioned when we did 1986, how it was kind of ridiculous how they were still running this team out here for the most. Because I was surprised to learn that they still had Matthews and Say at 86. So, so certainly in 85, and they did get off to a good start. But it was a lot like we've talked about, the '99 Cubs, maybe a little bit similar. Bunch of over the hill gang that gets off to a good start, and then
I mean the '99 Cubs were. Well, I feel like I got to defend the '85 Cubs here. The 85 Cubs were the dynasty in waiting. The '98 Cubs were the theme that okay.
Well,
the minute they re-signed Gary Gaetti,
correct.
It's basically we don't know what the fuck we're doing.
Right, at least the '85 Cubs pushed the 39-year-old Larry Bowa out of the way for an unproven Shawon Dunston.
Yeah, Dallas was working on Theo's dual trains of contending and developing at the same time.
And he proved to be successful at it. He just got fired before it really had become realized. But and Dunston was premature, as we've already sort of poured over. But
so our buddy Larry Bowa hit .246.
He did, and it paid off for the Giants. All that early seasoning for Shawon.
He ended up with the Mets too, but it was a waiver transaction.
Yep. His 62 OPS plus was his second highest as a Cub. 62. He was a disaster.
That's how many inches he is.
Yep.
It's
almost 5'2". Holy shit!
But look at your boy Leon, just stroking,
Yeah.
just getting the job done.
Yep.
Smooth swinging Leon Durham.
822 OPS, day games every day, out there rocking.
Right. I mean, he had his own supplements, to keep him going, but
you're not competing if you don't.
Bull produced. 100%.
If Ken Caminiti has taught us anything, it's if everyone's on it, even Chico Walker.
Ken Caminiti died for that 1996 MVP, and some people will say it was a noble death.
Certainly.
Hook up to an IV in Mexico at some point that season, right? Didn't that happen?
It in front of all those 1,200 people at Enron, it was worth it.
So how many All-Stars? How many All-Stars do you think the 85 Cubs had?
Well, Sandberg had to back up Tommy fucking Hurt. I think he was the only one, actually.
He was the only
one.
Am
I right? Yeah.
358 at the break. I think we've established.
I know. You got to make way for the guy with an Ian Happ
358 with a double.
With one double and one. It was ground rule. It hit the AstroTurf just past second base, and it flew 300 feet in the air and landed out of bounds. And when Rhino came out of April batting his usual 180, when her is double that, it's hard, for voters at the time, it's hard to get over. News travels slowly in 1985. We were all out watching Back to the Future. 24 intentional walks for Leon Durham. Wow.
Was Bowa batting behind him?
Oh, no, he's wearing glasses. Oh, God.
All right. Look out. Ball's going to look like a beach ball.
So Moreland, who we mentioned, got MVP votes, 307, 374, not a lot of slug, 440. 14 homers. He drove in 106 runs.
Yeah. Best clutch hitter, we used to say.
Tommy, her level.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Almost. Tommy had 111 that year, but...
And 8 home runs. That's so nuts. I remembered it less charitably. I thought it was 9 home runs and 101 RBIs. It was even more ridiculous.
I think 87 was crazier because when you make RBI baseball and you have Tommy Her up there with 300 RBI and 2 home runs, you don't know how to what attributes do you give that to a pixelated player? Because they gave Vince Coleman the ability to hit inside the park home runs just by holding the bat out. Tommy Her was like, how do we represent his clutchness and his averageness at the same time? And that's why I always pick the Cardinals. Jim Lindemann. He was power. He was the National League Dan Pasqua.
Big kid. Yeah, Maine West finest.
So how many Cubs had double-digit wins in 85? I would have got this wrong because I always thought it was 0.
Yeah, 86 was the first non-strike team to not have double digits. So somebody creeped across. So I do think the answer is probably 10 or 11, right, Andy? Whoever it is.
Yep, it's 11.
Oh yeah.
Is it? It wasn't Eckersley, right?
It was the Eck.
Oh, okay. Because Sutcliffe went 8-8, I think.
This is nuts. For a nearly average team, for a 77-win team.
Yeah.
32 guys with 7 wins. A baller tuning in with 2. Lee Smith with 7 wins because he averaged about 4 innings per outing. I bet.
Sure.
97 innings in 65 games. Finished 57 games, 33 saves. Larry Sorensen with 1 R.
Correct.
3 and 7.
He was also a Cardinal at one point along his stops, but he was the one outside of the Brian DeYate, Ray Fontenot arrival. He was the one free agent signing, coming into 85. Just to further accentuate your point about the Cubs running it back out there, and Dunston over Bowa. But that was the only difference. Larry Sorensen, Shawon Dunston, and then Brian DeYate, who started the season in the minors, and Ray Fontenot.
That's brutal. And then talk on, so everyone on Sports Illustrated drops a dime on Shawon, so everything's going to have to fall on him to be the linchpin, the thing to turn it over. That's rough. That's rough.
Who
22 years old.
Who wrote those recaps? I'm wondering.
Ray Firmwright. I don't know. It's like
Ron,
a class.
I remember Ron Fimwright.
Fimwright, yeah.
Yeah.
I may have just been.
I used to know all those SI writers back then.
Oh yeah, they'd make stars out of them in the back page. Andy, we have to do a cocoon with the Cubs coaching staff here. We have to do a Wilford Brimley here.
Ruben Amaro.
Older.
Not for the person you'd think. Not for Don Zimmer.
Billy Connors.
Donnie Oates.
Yeah, Johnny Oates, future Baltimore Orioles and Texas Rangers manager.
So this means when he's 39 and 85. So that means he ran the Orioles looking like he was about 72 years old when he was 44 years old. Yeah. And Zim. So this means Zimmer was 57 during the classic 88 year. That's wow.
88 or 85.
Don Zimmer didn't look any different when he managed the Cubs than he did when he played for the Cubs. He looked 55 years old when he was 28 and when he was 65. It didn't matter.
That basically looked like a newborn his entire life.
Pumpkin head with the big dent in it. And,
Jim Fry was only 54. He felt like he was 300 years old.
Right. Oh my God.
That's hilarious. He wore those little, whenever they played a game on turf, he wore these little blue tennis shoes with his, and he'd waddle out to the mound. Those stupid transition lenses and they're always like half dark because they couldn't tell. The lights would confuse them. They turn into sunglasses at the wrong time.
It's time to take your baseball. It's time to take a team photo, Jim. Oh, okay. Got to darken up real quick. Gotta make it look like I'm spying on some mobsters.
So who's your favorite pitcher on the 85 Cubs? Was it, I'll give you some choices here, was it Derek Bathello, Dave Gumpert, or the great Ron Meredith? A lot of talent.
Yeah.
When everybody gets hurt, you get everybody. It's kind of like the roster of the Royals are going to be breaking out in Canada this weekend. For this kids getting called up from rookie ball because we need a shortstop. What?
For me, it was Steve Trout because he looked like all of my friends' aunts back then. He's just like, oh, that's your aunt looks like Steve Trout.
I'm gonna go with off the menu. Also,
was it Johnny Abrego?
I'd like to go with former Cub and present Cub in 85. Pretty sure. Andy, can you confirm if Larry Gura is he on that roster?
Yes.
Okay. So Larry Gura was the ace of the 1980 Royals, the World Series team of the Kansas City team, World Series team in the 80s that didn't win a World Series. They lost. Jim Fry was their manager, and they lost to the Dallas Green and the Philadelphia Phillies. And Larry Gura was the Cy Young Award winner that year, and he had been a former Cub, I had been told, when I was a kid. And then in 85, when all those pitchers went out, and they had to call up Jay Baller and Dave Engel and just like put together any kind of flotsam. There it is. There's Larry Gura, who was at the top of the world in the American League 5 years earlier. He was probably already pretty old then. There was like his one shining moment there, like late in his life. And I just remember watching a national televised game in 85. It was just so fucking depressing. He's just this old ass on a hot summer afternoon. And Larry Gura's just getting fucking lit up like a Christmas tree. I don't think he won a game for the 85 Cubs. I just remember like how like undignified it looked like. I'm like, man, you weren't that good with the Cubs. You weren't that noteworthy with the Cubs in the 70s. And you went and you had this great career. You stayed away from Chicago. Now you're back and you're in the 85 Cubs and you're just getting pounded. And it's just like, that was
Missouri,
that was my impression of it. Yep. He's what?
Missouri does to people. Just sucks the life right out of you.
But that's Western Missouri, Kelly.
I've been in both. Can you tell the difference?
All right, I got this. The people at home are gonna love this. This is a visual. I'll find a way to put it in the post. I want you guys to look at two Cubs. Okay, so here's Jerry Abrego. You see Johnny
Abrego.
Can you see Johnny?
Yes.
Okay, now keep his picture in mind, and then I'm going to show you Derek Bathello. And I'm pretty sure the Cubs were just saving money on headshots. Let's just use the same one for everybody. So there you go. Just everybody, if they look like Mario, well, like the Mario Brothers, then we could just use the same headshot for everybody.
Band Survivor.
So for those of you listening at home, are like, what? They looked exactly the same.
Larry Gurr is from Joliet.
Yeah, I thought he was an Illinois guy because I do remember a girl went to our junior high. Her last name was Gurra that was supposedly related to him. Yeah, so he was like a local guy, much like Jim Lindemann from Maine West.
Any of you guys ever try to stake out Rick Russell's house in Arlington Heights when you were 7? Because the Giants got in a fight with the Cardinals. Was that you? Just me? Any of you guys do that? I did that. Just ride the old bike around Arlington Heights looking for what you think is Rick Russell.
You may have. Bill Buckner also lived in Arlington Heights. I only know that because in the early 80s in Elk Grove, because I grew up in Elk Grove, which is right next to Arlington Heights, there was a very trendy workout room that happened to open up a retail outlet in Elk Grove. It's called Nautilus. Anybody? Andy, remember Nautilus?
Oh, yeah.
It was like the, I don't know, the Bally's of the early 80s. And my brother, who was only in high school, he must have used like my parents' membership, but he went to work out at Nautilus. He was a high school player at Elk Grove. He's like 17 years old, and he told me that Bill Buckner was working out there. And I said, well, did you get an autograph? And he's like, no, it's fucking working out. What am I going to bother for an autograph for? So ever since then, I've always been a little, the people that go for autographs, it kind of left an impression on me. But yeah, I bring that up only to illustrate the point that apparently a lot of Cubs in the early 80s were living in Arlington Heights. So, Kelly, you didn't have to settle for Rick Russell's place. You could have stumbled across Junior Kennedy or somebody.
Paul was
Paul's in the basement.
Paul living over Rick's garage. So was Big Daddy throwing down? Is that why? I mean, was he swinging in that fight?
I think he would. No, I can't remember. And it's 87, so you. But no, he's got the next 7 years of his career to protect. He's got to think about.
Did you get what the infamous
starting that All-Star game?
The infamous fight from about 3 weeks ago between the Mariners and the Angels. I don't know if you saw the highlights of that fight, where the Mariners now can't lose after the fight and the Angels can't win, but they had a great shot. Somebody had an isolated camera on Shohei during the fight. So he's in the dugout. Everybody gets in a thing. Shohei pops out of the dugout and just kind of like hops around at the very edge of the fight because he needs to be out there, but nobody wants him in the fight. Nobody wants to. He's one of the best hitters in the game and one of the best pitchers. You don't need to get him hurt. I pictured Rick Russell like getting to the top step and just kind of like going, all right, that's enough. I somehow made it up here. I'm gonna go sit down. Just remember, I didn't sit in the dugout the whole time. I got to the top step.
I knew when I walked into Hot Dogs for the first time, and they had the Rick and Paul Russell for sale. I knew I was at home.
That's good.
Okay, so looking at the 85 Cardinals, there's not as many bums to make fun of, but that doesn't mean there aren't some. I know Darryl Porter was the catching star in the playoffs, but Tom Nieto actually got more starts during the regular season at catcher than Darryl did, because of course Darryl disappeared for a while.
Was he still battling drinking problems in '85? I thought he was recovered by then.
And I'll tell you, all I can say is AstroTurf, man, AstroTurf. Blacktop, 160 games a year. It's
right. Yeah,
we think it's all veteran stadium and people tearing their ACLs, but it's that heat coming off of there. It just messes with you.
So do you know how many home runs the 85 Cardinals hit?
That's a good question. I'm going to make less than 100.
Jack Clark hit 22. And how many total did the Cardinals hit?
Jesus, it could be less than 50. It could be.
I just looked it up. Is
it less than 75?
No, it's more than 75, but not by much.
Less than 100.
Yeah, 87.
Yeah.
Wow. Every other game, we get one homer.
That feels like a lot when you put it that way.
True, but they might have had some inside the Parkers too. How many over-the-wall homers they have?
We already talked about Tito Landrum and Mike Jorgensen. So Lonnie Smith started the season. I didn't realize he got shipped out during the season.
To the Royals.
To the Royals, because he could play every day, they said. It's a win-win. Whitey's line was
How about this?
If it's
Do you know who he got traded for?
me, no. Orsh?
He got traded
No, he was a Blue Jay.
for the all-time leading receiver in Bears history. He got traded for John Morris.
Johnny Morris?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
It'd be funny if he got traded for Jim Morris and it was actually it really was the guy from The Rookie.
Yes.
Like he's so old he got traded in 1985 for Lonnie Smith.
I forgot there were 2 Johnny Morrises in my life in 1987.
He got traded for
That's right.
For
One
John
on
The guy in your
one on the
TV
Cardinals.
every night at about 9, at 10:22 every night.
Concert hairspray and his
Oh yeah. Throwing it to
Yeah.
Genie.
Whitey Herzog said if there was a DH in the National League, then Lonnie Smith would have retired a Cardinal. Which
Wow.
seems. I mean, there's no way Whitey would have ever voted for a DH in the National League because that would have meant Lonnie Smith would have had to retire a Cardinal. I'm not buying that.
Yeah.
Oh,
By the way,
we also had Kurt Ford too, the famous one letter off
from Kurt Flood, right? Kurt Ford was in the starting lineup in the 1989 opening day Cubs-Phillies game that we discovered, Andy.
Oh, yeah.
By then he had moved on to Philadelphia. By the way, Lonnie Smith career WAR 38.5, just shy of the Harold Baines low bar of 38.8. Otherwise, Lonnie Smith would be a Harold Baines Hall of Fame.
Well, of course. Yeah. That Hall of Fame selection looks better and better all the time.
every year.
Steve Braun, 37-year-old Steve Braun was still hacking around. He's broken in 1971. And
he's not related to Ryan Braun, is he? That would have been established.
Grandfather.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I do remember my Steve Braun Topps card in the Cardinals. It was a very up-close one.
Steve Braun is most similar, according to baseball reference, to Milt Thompson, who is not Kurt Ford. I repeat, Kurt Ford is not Milt Thompson. You might confuse them, but they're not the same player.
But is he Ray Langford?
No, Ray Langford would be the one swinging from his heels in this situation. I tried to make a Ray Langford jersey when I was a kid. Didn't work out. Had a generic Cardinal jersey. Tried to write whatever's number on.
I tend to think of Milt Thompson more as a Brave. I forget that he was a Cardinal. But thanks for that, Kelly.
They traded Gerald Perry for Milt Thompson. Yeah, Mike LaValliere.
Now it's full circle.
What happened to Jeff Vladdy?
So LaValliere is the catcher that failed to get Sid Bream on Barry Bonds' soft-ass throw to walk off the 92 LCS. So who would have LaValliere? Can you answer me this, Kelly? Who did the Cardinals acquire from Mike LaValliere?
Pena. Mike Dunn, Andy Van Slyke. Mike Dunn, who went on to a good rookie year in 87.
Got it.
Van Slyke, yeah.
Good call.
Bad call from Mike.
Well,
bad call.
Bad
call
for the Cardinals.
But, yeah.
Not gonna feel bad for you having to suffer through the Joe Torre era, which is really the only mediocre era you guys have had.
That was some 87 home runs would have been a dream in those years.
The 85 Cardinals had another catcher who went on to play a long time in the big leagues and won a World Series. Brian Harper played on the 85 Cardinals. He was the catcher for the 91 Twins. So I didn't even realize that. Yeah, pitching-wise, the great Jeff Vladdy.
What did he do to lose that job, I wonder? Because, he's 180. He's got a 184 ERA. He must be cruising. Something must have happened where, this is before you could text while driving. So all these guys survived. And I don't know, if just something happened behind the scenes. I got a paywall for the St. Louis Post-Tribune. How does Vince Coleman make it all year? Vince Coleman made $60,000 that year. Good for him.
Wow, that was probably the league minimum, I believe. They had a holdout in '85. I believe Cecil Fielder was a rookie that year because they used him as an example of a guy making the minimum. There was actually a brief interruption during the season, a lockout for 3 games.
Mini lockout.
But yeah, the minimum salary. I'm almost sure it was 60,000 in 1985. So
Ozzy was already making 1.4 million. Those were good for him.
Yeah.
Modern numbers. That's a lot of Busch beer. So 0.1% of products worth of material on hops and water and barley in the form of a Busch 12 pack, and sell it for $5.99. That's it's money you can spend on the Wizard of Oz. This is a great team. I don't know what happened to it. Look at all these guys in their 20s. Tom Nieto.
Former Cub Bill Campbell pitched 50 games for the Cardinals. Soup, because it's by law.
Yep.
That has to be your nickname. So he got
right.
Soup.
Was Dave Campbell, the ESPN commentator who was very good, was he also nicknamed Soup? Yeah,
yeah,
right?
Of course.
Okay.
Let's see. Was he longtime Brave? I remember as Brave. Joe Baver.
Joe Baver. Yeah.
Leave it, Chris Berman. Leave it to Baver.
Should not be on the Cardinals. He should be on the Braves for all of his career.
Yeah.
That's misprint.
He got traded to the Braves for the great Randy O'Neal. A trade that really helped everybody. That's about it. Matt Keogh. Pat Perry. Is that the Pat Perry that pitched for the Cubs?
Yep,
It is.
89 Cubs.
Yeah.
Yep. He was also a Red. And I think the Cubs got him from the Reds. You unearthed it. I forget for whom. But, yeah.
Oh,
Todd Worrell only has 3 putouts
we did
the entire
unearth
year.
He got traded for your favorite player.
Leon Durham.
Pat
That's
Perry
right.
for Leon
I should have
Durham.
known that. That's right.
I always wanted why did Leon have to fall off so hard with the Reds? They traded him. He's supposed to replace Nick Kasatsky, and it just fell off like a ball.
And that was his hometown. I mean, it was a story just waiting to be told.
Bummer. Because Dave Parkin went back there and raked.
He did. Like you say, he was a runner-up. He was the MVP runner-up this season.
Do you remember who Leon finished up with?
Back with the Cardinals, I believe.
He went home for the Cardinals.
And
he was a star for them in 1989. He hit 056 with an RBI in 29
That's all right.
games.
I'm glad Leon's still alive. He was my favorite Cub. He's number 10 before Ron Santo. And
after
he's still around. He probably blew through a lot of his a lot of his savings, but he's still here. He's still with us. God bless you, Bull.
Yeah, putouts from the outfield from Andre Dawson.
He was right.
Classic highlights in MLB
that happened
history.
in '87 against Kelly Downs was the batter for the Giants, but yeah.
Dawson. So they got a pitcher. I didn't know that.
That's all right. He may have done it more than once. I don't know. Did it with a position player, and of course Durham was originally a Cardinal. I mean, you guys liked him. You had to give him up for Bruce Sutter. So
yeah. He was insurance in case we had to put Pedro at third base.
Well, and he was also blocked by Hernandez. Cubs got around that because they had Buckner. They just put him in the outfield. And that was the only 2 times he made the All-Star game was as an outfielder. But he was a good first baseman. Game 5 in San Diego, notwithstanding. That was a fluke.
So do you remember the change that happened to the playoffs in 1985?
Yes, they went from best of 5 to best of 7.
You're too late for the Cubs. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was great.
Thanks, Peter Uberoth or Bowie Kuhn.
So the Cardinals would have lost that NLCS. They went down 0-2.
They would have had home field, though. It would have opened in L.A. It was a weird thing. The best of 5 series back then was the team that had home field advantage started on the road. The Cubs opened in Wrigley, but did not have home field advantage because it was 2-3, not 2-2-1. They don't do that in basketball, right? They don't do it in hockey.
Oh, no. It's so weird.
Yeah. So it opened in Wrigley, and then all right, well, you got a chance to win 2 games, and then you just got to win one on the road.
Yeah, and it didn't make any sense. Uberoth was pissing and moaning that they were going to take.
They had announced that had the Cubs actually made the playoffs, which the 13-game losing streak rendered moot, had they gone to the playoffs, they would have had to play and gone to the World. I think all playoff games, not just the World Series, would have been played in Busch Stadium, not even Comiskey Park. Pretty sure that's a fact. So,
and what didn't make any sense about the year before in '84 was the Cubs with the lights played the weekday games.
Yeah,
and then they went to San Diego for the weekend. I mean, you could have switched it, and then your because that was those could have been the prime games.
Right.
You got better ratings on the weekend for the Cubs at home.
But back then, home field was predetermined, and it was supposed to be the NL West had home field advantage, so it would have required them to change the whole.
Baseball though was fun. Bud was still touting this crap back when, when he was insisting they couldn't just give the World Series to the team with the best record, because oh no, we have to make all these hotel arrangements. It's like, well, you don't know what fucking city you're going to anyway, so what does it matter?
Bud's like, no, you don't understand. We just buy out all 30 cities. We just buy out their hotel rooms. That's how that's why there's going to be a lockout and a strike this year.
Baseball. It's just the greatest.
Dave Johnstone was on this Dodger team that the Cardinals beat. Cardinals.
Wow.
They were supposed to be a middle of the pack team, and I can see why people thought that. And it's just another one of these annoying ass Cardinal teams where these guys just get hot as heck in the middle of the summer, and then they end up parking 100 wins, and then we got to hear about them all the time.
Well, let's see. When did they were in fourth place as late as, when they beat the Cubs on June 14th, 11-10. They moved into third place. But it was pretty tight because by the 21st, they were in first place. And they took over first place for good, it looks like, on the 29th of June. Oh, they did slip out again.
Well, they were fighting the Mets August. Down the stretch.
Yeah. So they were in, let's see. They were in second place on September 13th. They were a half game behind the Mets. And then they were 84 and 55. So they went 17 and...
Well, they went to Chicago,
6.
So they got the ship straightened out. Yeah. They got some wins.
Yeah, anytime they needed some wins, John Tudor shut out the Cubs.
That's right.
Well, no, this was what we got here? Your buddy Dave Campbell. No, Bill Campbell. Bill Campbell shut out the Cubs. Ray Fontenot, he scattered 7 in 5 innings, scattered 7 hits, but it wasn't enough. No, Kepshire was the starting pitcher.
Yeah, Fontenot was supposed to just be he was going to be the lefty, the crafty lefty in the bullpen, and he ended up having to start because everybody got hurt, and they did a little of both, and he wasn't very good anyway. Good old number 31.
Yeah,
not as good as
the Mets and the Cubs.
As his nephew Jerry, who played for the Bears,
or Albert.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Albert and Jerry were brothers, right?
Well, Albert was a brother, just like
Vance and Rudy Law. They were twins.
This Kurt Kepshire guy that won 10 games for the Cardinals, and I'm sure pitched in the World Series, was out of baseball the next year. Out of the majors.
Maybe he's like, things will never get better.
Nothing gets better than
I'm walking away on top.
Trekking those 5-star hotels between St. Louis and Kansas City. Oh my gosh, that's the life. Yeah. You wouldn't.
Kepshire beat the Cubs at the end of a skid in late September of '84 when they kind of had the division wrapped up, but still people were getting nervous. And then he definitely had, I'm pretty sure, 2 of the wins in that 13-game losing streak. There was a while where Kurt Kepshire was the bane of our existence. I assure you, fucker.
They pitched in 51 big league games ever. So he must have typical Cub killer. Barely play. We'll never forget you. Kind of like
pretty much.
Kind of like Victor Diaz.
If you're visiting Huey's Twitter page, if you're considering following Mike Donahue, I swear to gosh, they have the people you might want to follow right underneath it is Jeff Blauser. I swear to gosh.
There you go.
Maybe
what the fuck?
Tweet about him.
Are you serious?
I swear.
Kind of algorithm is going on around here.
Yeah, really. Why is Jeff Blauser on Twitter to begin with? So you just must have said something about him.
I'm sure I've made random references to him, but certainly not his handle.
I mean, this podcast, there's a Blauser reference in every one of these podcasts because he's, career 749 against the Cubs.
Right. And he's a Cub killer who the Cubs thought would be a good idea to sign and then was absolute ass.
Sanderson was kind of like, because Sanderson came up with Montreal. Forsh and Sanderson kind of had a thing. Big, tall, lanky guys who were just. Forsh has passed on. I guess that makes sense.
So is Sanderson.
Yeah,
Wait, did you...
Dead or alive on all these guys?
Right.
We're not doing that.
But I didn't know Bob Force was dead. Shit, I feel bad now.
These guys are
2011.
This was almost 40 years ago.
Yeah, 30. These guys are all past. We've seen what 54 years did to Don Zimmer. Right. Imagine what 61 years is doing to Bob Forsh.
By the way, Jeff Blauser, OPS plus with the Cubs 79. Jason Hayward's 85. I'm pretty sure Jason can get below 79 before the end of the year, before the end of his contract. Officially become the worst.
Larry Bowa had a 61. Remember?
Yeah, but Larry was bringing it with the glove.
True. In the range.
Yeah. He was
the leadership too.
In the leadership, right. In the
solid voice. It's like, what's that noise? Is there like a kid underneath the seat stuck? Is someone no, it's Larry. It's Larry. And he hasn't shaved.
Oh.
I didn't know Art Howe could play baseball. That's fantastic.
He did, yeah. He was an old Astro too.
Yeah, he was kind of an old Astro when he worked for the A's too. Just ask Billy Bean, he'll tell you.
Yeah.
Love these talks. Every time we have one, I leave reinvigorated from my love of the game, or whatever it is he says to Art when he saunters out of his office.
335 on base for the Cardinals that year. That's how it's done.
That's your pennant winner, huh?
96 caught stealing out of 314 stolen bases. 150 more stolen bases than the next best competitor, the Chicago Cubs, who had 182.
Yeah, that's
Missouri math. I apologize.
That's 400 attempts in a season, so it's like 3 attempts a game, which is unheard of today. But every 3 bases. Cubs were 182 to 49 stolen bases caught stealing. Padres that year were 60 and 39, 314 stolen bases in a season. Goodness gracious, sakes alive.
Well, the Cubs stole 182, and Davey Lopes was 47 of that.
And Sandberg had over 50, right?
Yeah, so it's basically it. A lot of it. 2 guys doing most of the work for the Cubs, and one of them was 40 years old. That seems like a recipe for success.
Playing every 4 days. So, except in Atlanta where they took him down.
They did.
Yeah, the Fulton County Stadium that doesn't even know it has a baseball team is gonna bring the hoses out because we got like Maury.
Well, I mean, they killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Davey Lopes' record, and they pretty much truncated Rick Sutcliffe's follow-up performance in '85. So
maybe they were still trying to reinvigorate the grass from Billy White Shoes Johnson doing this touchdown dances. Maybe he had torn up the sod so bad.
There you go.
The runoff ended up in the base path between first and second unintentionally, and it ruined the Cubs season.
Half of that Dire Straits video with all the sports highlights was just Billy White Johnson traipsing all over the field that killed Rick Sutcliffe.
You mean the one that begins with Steve Fuller grabbing a football out of a bag?
That was Fuller?
Yes, it was the Redskins game that Andy and I
Pardon me while I throw this 4.5 yards.
That's right. And Willie Galt runs at 93. It was the RFK game in '84. If you look at it, next time you see it, it's Steve Fuller, not Jim McMahon. Immortalized in Mark Knopfler's Dire Straits video.
Well, yeah, I mean, McMahon needed 2 hands to pick up a football. That's why I wore the gloves. I'm sorry, the guy didn't have quarterback hands. I love him.
Well, he wasn't Dave Craig.
Forrest Gray can rot in hell, but he had not quarterback hands. Bobby Dernier with 31 stolen bases. What kind of decade was this? I ask.
Very different. You should know. You're a Cardinals fan.
I know, but geez, this was. Man, flying all over these base paths. Frankly, how did we beat this team with Billy Hatcher and Thad Bosley? This is a strong outfit. I like it in 86. I'm looking forward to 86. I think this team's got a chance. I think it was just, injuries, bad luck,
Sure.
Yep,
of course, as we've chronicled, 86 would be one of the 7 worst seasons in the last 40. So things actually got worse before
Kelly's
probably is the most depressing of all the podcasts.
Yeah. But you were thinking right along with the Cubs. Going, ooh, no, just some bad luck last year. We're fine.
Right.
Keep everybody.
That's exactly
need any major
it.
changes.
Yeah.
If you look at it, if you look at the 85 roster, like in the Baseball Reference sorts it by whoever plays the most, but 86 is still Jody Davis, Leanne Durham, Ryan Sabrick, Shawon Dunston, Ron Say, Gary Matthews, Bob Dernier, Keith Moreland. 86 Cubs, entirely identical to the 85 Cubs, a team that was already breaking down with broken points and old age.
I mean, we knew the 84 Cubs, with a few exceptions, were old. And there they were 3 years later with the same guys.
Yes.
But it'll be fine.
Dallas Green just trying to keep his finger in the dike. I got prospects coming on the way. Just bear with me. Dunston's not the only one. He's going to get better. Soon you'll have Dave Martinez and Rafael Palmeiro and Mark Grace. But
wait until you see Damon Berryhill.
Yeah, Damon Berryhill. You don't have to worry about Jody Davis forever. Got Lester Lancaster. Well, he likes Les, but he also likes Lester. We don't know. They're both creepy. We don't like any of them. We try to get him to go to the middle name the entire time. Yeah. And also, he grew a mustache this year, so we're going to keep him down in Tidewater.
That's right.
And the two things he'll be most remembered for was it was a bunt, right? It was a walk-off bunt against the Giants on Monday Night Baseball. Is that what he did, or was it just he had a hit? I forget.
A triple.
I triple.
I was at that game, but
That's
we left her. Yeah, triple.
And then, not remembering what the count was in San Francisco.
Yes, in the playoff game. But now that you mentioned a walk-off bunt, can I finish? Because this totally happened in 1985. Because I remember going to my
perfect capper at 2.5 hours.
Cubs played the Cardinals. All right, so this is what I like to call a full circle. The game would have been. I'm gonna find the date, but I'm gonna bullshit while we get there. But this is hilarious. It was a Cubs Cardinals game. I want to say late July. It was sometime around the time that Arlington Park burned down. Because remember, Arlington Park was like on fire at one point during the 85 year, and then they had to cancel the rest of the season. So it was sometime around that point. Cubs-Cardinals. Cubs are kind of out of it. It's well after that 13-game losing streak, but the game goes extra innings. So if you can find a Cubs-Cardinals game at Wrigley, and it went pretty long, so it might have been like 12, 13 innings. And this is what I remember about this game is that the much-discussed Larry Bowa, and I don't know if he had his his big hairy Carey glasses on or whatever playing. But I wasn't on a Saturday. It wasn't the walk-off. That was in St. Louis anyway. But Larry Bowa comes up on Thursday, August 1st. I know this is the game. And it was a 14-inning game, so it was pretty long. In the 14th inning, Larry Bowa comes up. If you look at it on the play-by-play, and I'm not looking at it, I'll just tell you that basically early in the count, there's a runner on third. I believe there's only one out. It had to be because otherwise it'd make no sense. But Jim Fry asked Larry Bowa to lay down a bunt, and he fouled it off. And then there were 2 strikes. And then that little fucker in his wiffle bat kept fouling off a bunch of pitches. So after 2 hours and 20 minutes or whatever said of us just piling on Larry Bowa, I'm just going to say he did one thing, which was kind of not easy to do, but with 2 strikes in like 20 pitches from the aforementioned Ken Daly, Larry Bowa laid down a successful game-ending walk-off suicide squeeze to score Keith Moreland of all people. Yep. So, yeah.
Man.
Yeah,
Tom Nito couldn't handle the throw.
That was Tom Nito.
Darryl Porter couldn't handle the.
Well, it's 14 innings. Darryl might have been at Murphy's.
No, it was Darryl because he struck out to end the top of the 14th.
Okay.
I just found out why Ron Say is that guy's favorite Cubs, because Ron Say was the highest paid Cub all those years. So
probably big tipper.
There you go.
Even if he's only tipping, even if he's a terrible tipper, it's just a change coming out of his pockets is going to be enough.
Yeah, and even though Baseball Reference doesn't provide, I can guarantee that Larry Bowa's game-ending suicide did come with 2 strikes. pretty ballsy. So that's the one good thing I'll say about Larry Bowa. Beat the Cardinals with a 2-strike and walk-off suicide squeeze.
I wonder, was that his? That had to be close to his last game.
Right, that's true.
They carry him off the field and to the airport.
Onto the 152 Addison bus, which would take him to the blue. They didn't call it the Blue Line then, but somehow got him out of town. Yeah, could not have been much longer after that. Because I remember, even though we didn't care for Larry Bowa and we wanted Shawon Dunston to succeed, we felt a little bit betrayed that he would sign with the Mets to finish the season. Like, fuck you, Larry.
On a 2-2 pitch, Bowa bunted to Daly, who threw wildly to the plate as Moreland slid home safely.
There you go.
Earning every bit of those MVP votes.
Kelly found the recap. Love it.
Larry's last game of the Cub was just 11 days later. August 11th or August 12th. But this is great. So the Cubs were clutch when Larry played coming down the stretch. So they won that game. Then they beat the Mets. Then they the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The next 7 times Larry played, they lost. But he went out a winner, 8-7 win over the Expos. And then he got released. And it took him 11 days to catch on with the Mets. He's like, hey, somebody's going to want me, right? And he was great for the Mets. Huge pickup for them. Probably the reason the Cardinals won the division.
Yeah.
Larry hit 105 for the Mets down the stretch. God, what did they even need him for?
Bring up like a 17-year-old Kevin Elster instead of him or something like that, Bring up Greg Jeffries from 8th grade.
They had Rafael Santana. I wonder if he got hurt.
Could not hit and still would have been way better.
What about Ron Gardenhire? Was he not an 85 Matt? I feel like Santana and Gardenhire split the duties. And they had Backman and first Calvin Chapman in 84, and then Backman and Tim Tuffle in 85. Their whole middle infield was like a platoon. How the fuck? Well, I guess they had Gooden and Darling and Sid Fernandez, but man, it's amazing. Kind of funny to think about.
This Larry Bowa game was a 6-hour game.
Wow. 6 hours of greatness. Yeah, Ron Gardenhire hit 179 for the 85 Mets. Maybe that's why they
hired Larry Bowa.
This will bring it full circle. 1985, they had a scrappy young outfielder playing for those Mets who got 2 hits and 8 at-bats. Billy Bean.
Struck out 17 times.
Yep. Somehow struck out 17 times and 8 at-bats, which was possible for him. All right, I think we did what we set out to do. If people weren't entertained, this was more entertaining than the 85 Cub season. Probably not as entertaining as the 85 Cardinal season, but who cares?
They've played me that way for 16 years, Bowa said. I've got nearly 2,200 hits, so I must be getting some balls in somewhere. Wow. Some of us.
We can't finish with a finer quote than that.
Balls in somewhere.
He did have 2,000 hits because I do have a top space.
Yeah, he played 20 years.
Larry Bowa has 2,000 hits, right? He
played every day for 20 years. Yeah. Of course, he get 2,000 hits.
I love that he's hanging his hat on that. Basically, I didn't get hurt,
and he didn't have 2,200 hits. He rounded up. He had 2,161.
Must have some balls to get through.
Some of us. Michael Scott.
Oh, that's what I didn't look at. That might have been. Ooh. All right. One last thing here before we go. Got to check this. Because he was barely playing. So that hit against the Cardinals in his bunt.
Was it a
second hit of the game? No, I was thinking maybe it was his last hit as a Cub. It wasn't.
Okay.
But he only got 2 hits for the Mets. So it was 1, 2, 4.
Just about one of his last.
He only had 8 more hits in the big leagues after that bunt. He really should have just gone home after that. Just said, all right.
The Cardinals pitched out. The Cardinals pitched out on 1 and 2.
Oh,
they stole the sign. There was a big meeting at the mound.
Very clever.
This whole Larry Bowa at bat is like 4 hours of a 6-hour game.
Well, I swear to God, look, we were like chugging along Toohey Avenue from like Higgins all the way to like Northwest Highway. And I swear, I think you're right, Kelly. That entire at bat broadcast, yeah. And with Dwayne Stats on the call, no doubt.
I would guess the Cubs bunt sign in 1985 was Jim Fry going, bunt!
Yeah.
I think we got, Whitey, I think we have their signs.
Zimmer is in the coach's boxes using elaborate semaphores to relay phrase and rise instruction. And so signaling, Zimmer touches parts of his body that he can't see without a mirror. Bowa steps out of the batter's box and stares at Zimmer as Zimmer flails away at himself with enough energy to leave scars. Quote, I think Zim and I were the only ones who knew the signals, Bowa said. Wow, who wrote this? It must be Holtzman. No, Lincecum. Who else?
That's fantastic. That's a good find, Kelly.
Once the Tribune, they threw some in there. They had some hitters. They had nearly 2,200 hits. They had some balls in there somewhere,
as Larry would say.
All right. Well, thank you, Kelly. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad you.
Yeah, thanks, Katie.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Mike.
Showed up, and Mike, as always, good job.
Enjoyed it.
Next time we do this, we'll be back to wheel spinning. It's funny that we make a big deal out of spinning the wheel, and then we don't. But everybody, before they listen to the podcast, they know what year it is. Right. There's no drama. It says right on it because I need people.
It's only drama for us too. Yeah. Right.
And we have this. We have this innate ability in the little chat we do before to basically guess. I mean, we'll talk about something else, spin the wheel, and it'll land on something related to what we were talking about, which I think always sounds fixed to the group, to the fans, but it's not. Although they don't really care that we spin the wheel anyway. But.
No. Well, when they're bringing back 39-year-old Gary Matthews every year, these things kind of blend in with each other. I mean, there's a bit of crossover with these outfits. Absolutely. And we're happy for it as fans because, oh my gosh, I don't know how you guys are doing this. And the Bears, the coaching searches and the various. Hang in there, fellas. Hang in there.
Hey, we're almost done. We only got 6 to go.
Yep.
6 out of 32 Cub seasons.
But then we got the Bears have a bunch of new opponents this year. So
yeah, NFC East.
We'll never run out of crap, ever.
Such is life.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Kelly.
Andy.
Many of us have herpes.